Chapter 2473, Dragon's Contractor. Finally, success. Xiaofan breathed a sigh of relief once the magic cage in the center of the island broke. He had somewhat underestimated the core magic arrays. Even with the magic elven cannon's power, it had taken over a full day's assault and nearly all of his magic crystals to destroy all 7 arrays. These magic arrays were even tougher Zero-Wing City's defensive magic array. The instant the magic cage shattered, the slumbering silver divine dragon opened its eyes and released a deafening roar, which echoed across the entire island, making the ground tremble. The infant dragon spread its wings, flapping them and creating a powerful storm that blew away the remains of its confinement. The storm's mighty winds even made Xiaofan stumble back from over 500 yards away. Is this the power of a true divine dragon? An indescribable astonishment filled Xiaofan as he gazed at the 50-meter-tall silver divine dragon. Silver divine dragon, Audiobook, dragon, mythic, level, HP, / He couldn't discern the divine dragon's level, but its statistics revealed that it was a bona fide Tier 4 mythic. Despite the fact that it was only a mythic monster, the silver divine dragon felt as if it had absolute dominance over the world around it. Even the high magic elf, Unsealed, was a weakling next to this silver divine dragon. Xiaofan had been able to resist, albeit slightly, Unsealed's power, but standing before Audiobook, he couldn't even consider resisting. Movement was immensely difficult in Audiobook's presence, much less fighting. If this infant dragon willed it, it could slay him with a thought, and he wouldn't even get the chance to summon a Tier 4 hero. Now free of its magic cage, Audiobook landed before Xiaofan and asked, "Little human, are you responsible for releasing me from my cage?" Audiobook's tone was mild and calm, but he radiated an insane pressure. When Xiaofan heard the divine dragon's question, he felt as if the heavens themselves were demanding an answer, and there was no room for lies. "Yes, Lord Divine Dragon. I destroyed the magic cage's core magic arrays and freed you," Xiaofan replied, his tone neither too humble, nor too arrogant as he suppressed his building anxiety. Dragons were inherently prideful creatures. After all, they stood at the peak of God's domain and viewed lesser creatures with little to no importance. However, dragons were a race that also respected strength. If one proved themselves, they could earn dragons' recognition. Divine dragons were no exception to this. If he groveled before the silver divine dragon, Audiobook would look down on him, and his reward might be even less than if he had performed badly. "You have truly surprised me. I had never expected such a tiny being to destroy a cage set by a goddess," Audiobook said, surprise and curiosity flashing in his eyes as he watched Xiaofan. He looked at Xiaofan as if he had just seen an ant flip an elephant. "However, in my divine eyes, you are telling the truth. According to the ancient agreement, I will engage in a contract with you to serve as your companion since you have rescued me, but I am a divine dragon. A weakling will not qualify to stand beside me. First, you must pass my test. If you do, I will acknowledge you. You have 4 months to prove yourself. I will remain by your side during this time and fight with you. Of course, if you fail my test, our contract will be dissolved. Over the next 4 months, I will give you 3 chances to challenge my test. If you fail all 3, our contract will be dissolved. System, congratulations. You have rescued the divine dragon, Audiobook, and completed the first phase of the epic quest, Void Cage. Rewarding 10 legacy skill points. You have become a divine dragon's contractor. System, you have triggered the second phase of the epic quest, Void Cage. Quest content, complete Audiobook's test within 4 natural months. Rewards unknown. Sure enough, obtaining a divine dragon won't be so easy. The notifications didn't particularly surprise Xiaofan. I'll have to try and grow as strong as possible in the next 4 months. The various superpowers had sacrificed much to summon a Tier 5 creature with their summoning towers in the past. Some had even been required to kill Tier 5 NPCs to retain their summoned creatures and establish them as their fortress's true guardians. Although Auerbach was only a Tier 4 mythic, not even ordinary Tier 5 monsters would be a match for the Divine Dragon. It would be odd if no trial existed to retain control over such a creature. Fortunately, as far as Xiaofan was concerned, 4 months would be more than enough time for Xiaofan to prove himself a strong enough companion for Auerbach. As long as he could fully unlock his epic mana body and obtain the 3 last fragments of Solomon's sword, passing Auerbach's test shouldn't be a problem. The moment Auerbach finished his explanation, the Divine Dragon began to chant an incantation. A 4-fold magic array appeared around Xiaofan, rapidly shrinking until it transformed into a silver rune. The rune then imprinted itself on Xiaofang's arm before fading away. Xiaofan then received another system notification. System, you have obtained the Contractor's mark and become the Divine Dragon, Auerbach's Contractor. System, the Fortress Lord's token has discovered the Contractor's mark. Do you wish to let the Divine Dragon Auerbach serve the Starlight Fortress's guardian? Xiaofan agreed without a second thought, and once he did, a new tab, Contracted Companions, appeared in his system interface. He clicked on the tab and discovered Auerbach's statistics, which contained new information. Silver Divine Dragon, Auerbach, Dragon, Mythic, Level 111 HP 10, 900 000/10, 900 000 crap. Isn't his HP a little too high? Xiaofan nearly cursed aloud when he saw Auerbach's statistics. He had thought the Starlight Behemoth's 4 billion HP had been a little much for a level 113 mythic monster. If players wanted to kill such a boss with conventional methods, they'd need a 1,000-man team of Tier 3 players. Unless a team could deal -8 million damage per second, they'd never overcome the Realm Lord's battle recovery, much less kill it. With the Starlight Behemoth's horrific defense, ordinary Tier 3 experts would barely deal -10,000 damage with their attacks. Auerbach, however, was even more frightening. The Divine Dragon was only level 111, yet it had nearly 3 times as much HP as the Starlight Behemoth. Its battle recovery alone would regenerate 109 million HP every 5 seconds, and a Divine Dragon should have at least twice as high defense as the Realm Lord. Staring at Auerbach's statistics, Xiaofan doubted that even Tier 4 players could kill it, not to mention new Tier 3 players. While Xiaofan was shocked over Auerbach's astonishing attributes, the island under his feet began to tremble and fall apart. Now that the magic cage is gone, this island won't hold for much longer. We need to leave quickly, Auerbach warned his new human companion. The infant dragon began to chant another incantation, and in the blink of an eye, Xiaofan vanished and reappeared on Auerbach's back. The silver divine dragon then spread his wings and, with a flap, transformed into a streak of light, flying toward the spatial tear the summoning tower had opened and leaving the void land. Meanwhile, Divine Tribes members were hard at work repairing the Starlight Fortress's infrastructure. They'd also begun constructing hotels and shops. To better manage the fortress, Divine Tribe had sent over 100 Tier 3 personal guards to garrison the fortress, all of which were tasked with patrolling the streets and protecting the fortress's various establishments. While Phythalia and the other Divine Tribe upper echelons planned the patrol routes for the personal guards, something odd happened to the summoning tower in the south end of the fortress. Divine runes began to appear around the lightless tower, illuminating the structure with a dazzling glow. Suddenly, an intense aura washed over the Starlight Fortress, and every player within felt stifled, struggling to move. Where is this aura coming from? What is going on over there? Did we miss a guardian boss? Everyone turned toward the brilliantly lit summoning tower, growing anxious. Even Phythalia and the guild's other upper echelons, who met in their temporary residence, wore grim expressions. None of the guardian bosses they had faced had such a powerful aura, yet Divine Tribe's team had still relied on a Tier 4 hero summoning scroll to defeat them. Even then, the Silver Lion Legion had suffered significant losses. Now that the Tier 4 hero they had summoned had gone, they didn't have a Tier 4 combatant in the fortress. If another Guardian boss had truly appeared, the consequences would be dire. They had already invested a considerable amount of resources into repairing a portion of the Starlight Fortress. If they had to fight in another huge battle, everything they had worked for would crumble, even before the various superpowers experts arrived. Quick, look! Something's above the summoning tower. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Ew, isn't that a spatial tear? Why is there a spatial tear over the tower? The fortress's players recognized the dark tear for what it was immediately, and as it grew, they were overcome with curiosity and confusion. Suddenly, a streak of light flew from the spatial tear, and a figure appeared before them all. As they got a clearer look, what they saw rendered them all dumbfounded. A dragon? Chapter 2474, Fortress Startled, Why Has a Dragon Appeared? Phythalia's expression darkened when she saw the divine dragon, which was over 100 meters long, in the sky. She had seen a dragon personally during a quest and was certain that it was a disastrous creature. Neither players nor NPCs, not even NPC cities, could stand before a dragon's might. She had watched a dark dragon destroy an empire's border city and annihilate any reinforcements the empire had sent. Players like her had only been able to watch as the dark dragon destroyed the NPC city and the Tier 4 NPC-led army. If the war god's temple in the empire hadn't sent its forces in time and eventually defeated the dark dragon, the creature would have even slaughtered the nearby players. Other than Phythalia, every divine tribe member in the Starlight Fortress panicked. Most of them had never seen the horror dragons could wreak, but they could all tell how terrifying the creatures were after seeing Auerbach's statistics. Auerbach's level of 111 wasn't anything special, but how did it have 10 billion HP? With the incredible defense of dragons, they would never overcome Auerbach's battle recovery, even if Auerbach stood there and allowed the tens of thousands of players in the fortress to attack. Compared to Auerbach's insane HP, the pressure the dragon radiated was nearly fatal to Divine Tribe's members. They were all experts, with hundreds of tough battles under their belts, yet they felt as if they were filled with lead as they bathed in Auerbach's dragon might. In this state, they'd be fortunate if they could muster the strength to flee, much less fight. Why is this happening? McCaffrey despaired as he watched the divine dragon soar above the Starlight Fortress. Like Phythalia, he had witnessed the power dragons wielded. Current players had practically no hope of defeating such a creature. Even if they still had their Tier 4 hero, they wouldn't stand a chance against this dragon. Still, Divine Tribe had gone to great lengths to secure its temporary residence in the Starlight Fortress, investing tons of manpower and resources to develop it. The loss of abandoning the fortress would be extraordinary. We don't have a choice. McCaffrey, notify all Tier 3 players and tell them to prepare for battle. I'll try to attract the dragon's attention while you get everyone out of the fortress. Once we convene, we'll try to lure it away, Phythalia said, taking in a deep breath as she prepared herself for a final struggle. They knew they were no match for the dragon, but if Auerbach wasn't here to capture the Starlight Fortress, they only needed to lure the creature away to save it. Isn't the price of this plan a little too high, Commander Phythalia? McCaffrey paled a bit when he heard the command. Phythalia wanted to lure the dragon out of the fortress, but even ordinary players would realize that Auerbach could likely kill Tier 3 players with a single hit. His commander intended to use their players 1W Tier 3 experts as bait. The various superpowers Tier 3 experts were desperately grinding to level up. If they sacrificed so many of their guild's Tier 3 experts now, Divine Tribe would find itself at a disadvantage when it competed with the various superpowers later. This is our only option, Phythalia said. If we don't lure the dragon out of the fortress, everything we've invested thus far will go to waste. As long as we can draw the dragon out, we can recoup our losses with the Starlight Fortress's conveniences. I understand. Gritting his teeth, McCaffrey began to contact the Tier 3 players in the fortress. As Fithalia had said, the levels they'd have to sacrifice to lure Auerbach away would be nothing as long as they secured their hold on the Starlight Fortress. The fortress offered massive advantages, after all. Suddenly, Crimson Witch interrupted, pointing at the Divine Dragon in astonishment. Commander Fithalia, it looks like there's a player on the dragon's back. A player? How is that possible? For a moment, Fithalia assumed Crimson Witch was hallucinating. They were talking about a Tier 4 dragon. Even if it were only an infant dragon, it still wouldn't degrade itself by serving as a mount, not even for Tier 4 or 5 NPCs. In God's domain, there were individuals known as Dragon Knights that could ride dragons after capturing and nurturing a Tier 3 newborn dragon. These Dragon Knights stood at the very apex of God's domain, and they even demanded respect from emperors. But riding a dragon was nothing but a dream with players' current strength. And yet, as soon as Fithalia finished her question and turned toward the Divine Dragon, the sight stunned her. She could actually see someone standing on Auerbach's back. Although she couldn't tell who it was due to the bright light emitting from the Divine Dragon, she could spot the green diamond marker, which only players possessed, hovering above the figure's head when she squinted. Before she could recover from her daze, however, Auerbach began to descend. As the Divine Dragon approached the ground, the green diamond marker became clearer. It wasn't long before many of the other Tier 3 experts in the fortress noticed it, as well. How is that possible? A player can actually ride a dragon? Who is that? Surprise and confusion overwhelmed everyone as they stared at the figure on Auerbach's back. Commander Fithalia, it's coming toward us, Crimson Witch exclaimed when she realized that Auerbach was flying in their direction. When Auerbach had first appeared, the Divine Dragon had been too far away for her to notice anything peculiar. Fortunately, unlike Tier 2 players, she could, more or less, resist Auerbach's dragon might, but as the Divine Dragon approached, the pressure she felt grew stronger. Now, even breathing became a challenge. Hopefully, the dragon rider isn't an enemy. Everyone, prepare your instantaneous movement scrolls. If you notice even a hint of aggression, flee. Every life we can save matters. Fithalia reminded her comrades in a grim tone. If they had merely faced a wild dragon, they would, at worst, lose the Starlight Fortress, abandoning it and allowing the creature to destroy it. If the Divine Dragon were under a player's control, however, they had a much bigger problem. If that player wanted to, they could command their dragon to massacre every Divine Tribe member in the area. All of the guild members in the fortress were Divine Tribes experts, including the guild's 2 trump card legions. If they were annihilated, the consequences would be unimaginably dire. Everyone around Fithalia did as they were told, pulling instantaneous movement scrolls from their bags. Crimson Witch and the guild's other upper echelons all retrieved Tier 3 instantaneous movement scrolls, trump cards the guild had prepared for them as a protective measure. These scrolls were incredibly rare, only obtainable by luck. While Divine Tribes members in the temporary residence prepared to flee, Auerbach arrived above the building. The Divine Dragon's speed caught everyone off guard. Crimson Witch and the others were racked with hopelessness, realizing that they couldn't actually activate the scrolls in their hands. Worse, the instantaneous movement scrolls weren't the only thing that had abandoned them. They felt as if space itself had left them to die, siding with the Divine Dragon hovering above them. Spatial imprisonment? How is this happening? Astonished, Fithalia could do nothing but stare at the Divine Dragon as it began to land. Spatial imprisonment was a move only the strongest Tier 4 NPCs could use. No monster should be capable of mastering the skill. Yet, this dragon had a naturally occurring domain that included the spatial imprisonment's effects. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU now, they had no hope of escape. This stranger held their lives in his hands. As Fithalia and her comrades' anguish reached its peak, a familiar voice reached their ears. "I was hoping to find you. I'm glad you're all here." As the dragon's rider spoke, he jumped down from Auerbach's back. Seeing the player up close, everyone was stupefied. Guild leader Black Flame. Chapter 2475, all sides shaken when they realized that the figure riding Auerbach had been Xiaofan. Silence fell in Divine Tribe's temporary residence as everyone stared at the swordsman. McCaffrey and Crimson Witch, in particular, watched Xiaofan walk toward them with dropped jaws. They both felt as if they were looking at a monster with limitless strength. Whenever they thought that they had seen the depths of Xiaofang's, they soon learned that all they had seen was a fraction. Xiaofang's Crimson Dragon flying ship, for example, and the domain tools he had used to suppress the Starlight Behemoth and strengthen the Silver Lion Legion, the various superpowers coveted these items, yet they couldn't get their hands on them. Xiaofan, on the other hand, had them all. Moreover, Xiaofan had successfully captured the Starlight Fortress, a feat none of the various superpowers could accomplish at this stage of the game. And now, Xiaofan even had a dragon. Dragons were creatures of ultimate destruction in God's domain. Even the various NPC kingdoms and empires got headaches whenever one showed up, and yet, Xiaofan had one under his control. Even if Auerbach were only a Tier 4 infant dragon, it would be more than enough to deter the various superpowers from attacking the Starlight Fortress. So, this is why he's so confident. Realization dawned on Phythalia when she glanced at the divine dragon standing silently behind Xiaofan. She now had an inkling of why Xiaofan had rejected her proposal after learning that the Western continent's superpowers might band together to target his fortress. With Auerbach here, the superpowers experts would have to be suicidal to cause a ruckus in the Starlight Fortress. They wouldn't even have the chance to escape if Auerbach set his sights on them. Shortly after Xiaofan had arrived at Divine Tribe's temporary residence with Auerbach, some of the various superpowers spies reported the situation to their superiors. "Impossible. You're talking about a dragon. How can a player possibly control such a powerful monster?" When the various superpowers upper echelons read the reports, they assumed their subordinates had turned traitorous, trying to trick them with false information to prevent them from assaulting the Starlight Fortress. However, as these upper echelons continued to receive similar reports from other spies in Divine Tribe, they couldn't deny the truth. There was no way all of their spies had turned against them at once. To gain more information and a better understanding of the situation in the Starlight Fortress, they had secretly paid a huge price to turn some of Divine Tribe's members in the fortress to their side. Naturally, they had ensured that none of the bribed players knew about each other to prevent these players from collaborating to provide false information for Divine Tribe's benefit. Although the reports were unbelievable, it was undeniable after receiving reports from over a dozen spies. Once they had verified the information, a commotion swept through the various superpowers. Some of the superpowers that had planned to assault the fortress began to hesitate. They carefully considered whether or not they should oppose Xiaofan and the Divine Tribe with the rest of the superpowers. Before the dragon had appeared, they had been 90% sure that they could take the Starlight Fortress. Even if they failed, they'd ensure that no one could use the fortress, even if Divine Tribe sent all of its experts to protect it. However, the situation had changed. If they tried to take the fortress with a Tier 4 Dragon Guard, they'd suffer severe losses. Players didn't have a snowflake's chance in hell of defeating a Tier 4 dragon, which was a fact the various superpowers had long since verified. Since God's Domain's launch, dragons had been responsible for the destruction of many NPC border cities. The Western continent proved to be far more dangerous than the East. Of course, if they gave up on this operation, they'd have a very difficult time finding another opportunity to move against the Starlight Fortress. The fortress had only recently been captured, and even if Divine Tribe had invested a ton of manpower and resources in its repairs, the guild couldn't fully repair the fortress in 3 short days. The Starlight Fortress was at its weakest right now. If they did not assault the Starlight Fortress now, taking it would only become more challenging as time passed. While the various superpowers considered their next move, a 300-man team attacked a demonic creature army camp in a level 100 neutral map not far from Star Valley. Not only did this campsite house over 6,000 demonic creatures, but every one was level 110. These demonic creatures were even led by a level 112, mythic-ranked 8-eyed Scorpion King. Despite such a powerful force, however, the 300-man team held an overwhelming advantage in the battle. They even overwhelmed the Scorpion King, not to mention the level 110 Grand Lords. The army's boss couldn't manage to deal any significant damage, while the 300-man team continued to chip away at its HP. The team hadn't suffered a single casualty, even by the time the Scorpion King fell. In contrast, demonic creature corpses littered the ground. We really got lucky this time. Not only did we find a demonic creature campsite, but the Scorpion King also dropped a level 100+ epic battle axe. Thunder, this axe should go to you, a thin man in pitch-black armor said as he handed the battle axe to another man, who stood nearly 3 meters tall and was covered in runes. If McCaffrey had seen this, he would have been astonished. This team was the Hell Legion, the Netherworld Empire's strongest trump card legion. Every member was a Tier 3 player, and they all had the combat standards to rival Grand Lords of the same level. The thin man, shrouded in a dense, lethal aura, felt as powerful as a mythic monster. Commander, we've just received a report from the higher-ups. They claim that a Tier 4 infant dragon is guarding the Starlight Fortress, and because of this, many superpowers have abandoned the notion of assaulting the fortress. Our superiors are warning us to be careful, a Tier 3, black-clad assassin suddenly informed the thin man. An infant dragon? The man's lips curled into a smile. How interesting. It's no wonder why they captured the Starlight Fortress, disregarding the consequences, but if they think that can stop us, they're mistaken. Other superpowers might be afraid of the dragon that protected the Starlight Fortress, but the Hell Legion was not. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. The reason was very simple. There was only one dragon in the fortress, while the Hell Legion had 300 players. If the Hell Legion went on a rampage inside the fortress, they could slay hundreds or thousands of players before the dragon would reach them. They'd also be able to escape the dragon's pursuit. They weren't concerned that they couldn't take down the Starlight Fortress in the least. Commander, I've received another important message. You've received a request to negotiate with Phythalia, the black-clad assassin added. Phythalia? The thin man smiled when he heard the name. Since an old friend has so graciously invited me, I must show her the proper respect. Pack up, everyone. We're heading to the Starlight Fortress. Chapter 2476, Frightening Divine Dragon Star Valley, Starlight Fortress. With Hell Rush in the lead, the Hell Legion finally reached the Starlight Fortress after more than 5 hours of continuous fighting. The fortress had already undergone 2 days of repairs and looked nothing like it had. Not only did the fortress have a new physical look, but its magic array was now fully active, as well. A layer of mana enveloped the fortresses, creating an oasis in the Star Valley's mana-thin environment. Moreover, a faint layer of mist surrounded the fortress walls, adding hints of mystery and solemnity. This ancient fortress is amazing. Its mana is so dense. If we could train in the fortress long-term, our mana control would improve significantly. That's not all. If we can live and train here, we could even improve our combat standards. It's no wonder why the higher-ups asked us to take action. If we can take this fortress, we could boost our internal and core members' development speed. We wouldn't have to compete for entry slots to the Demonic Mist secret land every week. When the Hell Legion members saw the Starlight Fortress in the distance, their eyes glowed with excitement. The Western continent lacked mana, which was why areas with high mana density became targets for the various superpowers. Players could improve their mana affinity when in those areas, and they'd have a clearer mind while training. This would be of great help as players tried to gain more control over mana. Because of this, whenever a player discovered a mana-dense area, a war between guilds shortly followed. Even the various superpowers participated. Of the mana-dense environments the Hell Legion's members had experienced thus far, none could hold a candle to the Starlight Fortress. The fortress's mana was dense enough that it would even be extremely helpful to experts of their caliber. Commander, Divine Tribe is behaving strangely. They've only sent one party to guard the front gate. They didn't even bother to send a Tier 3 NPC. Aren't they afraid that players will barge in? A Tier 3 ranger in blue leather armor commented when he only saw 6 Tier 2 players by the Starlight Fortress's entrance. In the West, ruling guilds were even required to dispatch Tier 3 NPC guards to the fortress that already had NPCs. The front gate was every fortress's weakest point, even with the defensive magic array active. If a team attacked the front gate before the gate's defensive mechanisms could be engaged, they could destroy the gate and open the fortress to invasion. Thus, powers typically sent in plenty of powerful Tier 3 NPCs to protect the front gate after capturing a fortress. Divine Tribe, however, had done the exact opposite. The guild hadn't even sent a single Tier 3 player to protect the Starlight Fortress's gate, much less Tier 3 NPCs. Moreover, there were only 6 Tier 2 players by the entrance. Divine Tribe was practically begging for another power to attack. Even if the guild wasn't worried about hostile forces destroying the front gate, it was still an important location. Players would hand over their entrance fees at the gate, after all, and those coins would be kept in the gate's storage before being transported to the Fortress Lord's mansion at regular intervals. If players plundered the coins during delivery or from the gate's storage, the ruling power would suffer for its lack of security. That's not our concern. Get ready, everyone. We're going in, Hell Rush declared, ignoring Divine Tribe's careless organization. As far as he was concerned, whether or not Divine Tribe sent Tier 3 NPCs to guard the front gate didn't matter to the Hell Legion. If the Hell Legion wanted to break that gate down, Divine Tribe couldn't stop them. Following their orders, the Hell Legion's members summoned their advanced-ranked guild mounts, the Magic-Horned Steed. The Magic-Horned Steeds were large, the size of adult elephants. When 300 Magic-Horned Steeds charged as a group, even the ground trembled under their hooves. Once the Legion reached the gate, however, the party of 6 remained indifferent. They neither seemed afraid nor awed by the sight of the mighty Hell Legion. Rather, they calmly approached Hell Rush. "May I know why you're all here?" a level 105, Tier 2 knight asked. Fearlessly, he explained, "The fortress is still sealed, and uninvited players cannot enter. We've received an invitation from Commander Phythalia. You may notify her that the Hell Legion has arrived," Hell Rush proudly announced, looking down at the 6 Divine Tribe members before him. "So, you're Commander Phythalia's guests. I'll contact her for authorization immediately. Please, wait a moment." When the Tier 2 Guardian Knight heard that the Hell Legion were here at Phythalia's request, he contacted the commander and asked her to grant Hell Rush and his companions permission to enter the fortress. Not long after the Guardian Knight reported to his superior, he began to chant an incantation while watching the Hell Legion. Once he finished, a runic mark appeared on the back of their hands. "Alright, you now have temporary permission to enter the Starlight Fortress," the Tier 2 Guardian Knight informed the guests. He then warned them with a heavy tone, "However, before you go in, I must inform you of something. Currently, a dragon is resting in the fortress, and the mana isn't fully stable yet. So, once you enter the fortress, I hope that you won't cause too much of a commotion. You shouldn't anger the dragon. If it decides to act, we won't be able to stop it. I hope you can understand." As the Tier 2 Guardian Knight finished his warning, the Hell Legion's members couldn't contain their grins. They acted as if the Guardian Knight had told the funniest joke in the world. Surely, this Tier 2 Guardian Knight was trying to scare them. But who were they, exactly. They were members of Netherworld Empire's strongest trump card legion. They had encountered dragons far more often than the various superpowers experts. They knew just how powerful a Tier 4 dragon was. They were even confident of defeating one, much less surviving its wrath. After all, it wouldn't be the first time. Even if they weren't a match for the Starlight Fortress's dragon, they had plenty of methods to escape its pursuit. Divine Tribe was dreaming if it thought one measly dragon could make them behave in the Starlight Fortress. We understand. Can we go in now? Hell Rush asked dryly. Of course. Realizing that the man before him paid no heed to the warning, the Tier 2 Guardian Knight could only sigh and nod in reply. He signaled for his subordinates to make way for the Hell Legion. Divine Tribe's guards stepped aside, and Hell Rush led his legion into the Starlight Fortress atop their magic-homed steeds. The mounts left clouds of dust in their wake, and the ground within a 100-yard radius of the legion trembled. The Hell Legion had no intention of keeping a low profile. As the Hell Legion entered the fortress, however, they felt an intense pressure bear down on them, and every member of the legion struggled to move. Some of them nearly fell off their steeds. What's going on? Why is there such immense pressure in the fortress? Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU questions filled the legion members' minds as they fought through the stifling pressure. Before they could find an answer themselves, however, a gigantic figure descended from above. Not only did this figure's wings blot out the sky, but it also made the magic-horned steeds kneel and tremble. The mighty mounts were no longer under the Hell Legion's control. This colossal figure was none other than the silver divine dragon, Auerbeck. The instant Auerbeck landed before the Hell Legion, the Legion's members realized something that left them shaken. Spatial imprisonment? But how? The Hell Legion's members sensed that space around them had seemingly frozen, and they couldn't help but gasp. At the same time, their expressions turned indescribably grim. Chapter 2477, Heaven-defying capabilities. The Hell Legion members had heard of spatial imprisonment before. In fact, they were very familiar with the ability. Quite a few special regions on the Western continent were affected by spatial imprisonment, in which players couldn't use any tools. It wasn't an uncommon effect. However, sensing the spatial imprisonment here had a different meaning. Here, it was one of the dragon's passive abilities. Crap. How are they so blessed by the system? Not only did it give them such a powerful dragon, but the dragon can even use spatial imprisonment? Who could possibly stop that? Thunder Beast, a primitive man that stood at nearly 3 meters tall, cursed as he lost his earlier complacence. The Hell Legion knew how powerful dragons were. Not only had they encountered multiple dragons in the past, but they had also clashed with a few of them. This was why they had dared to venture to the Starlight Fortress, even after learning that a dragon guarded it. Of all the dragons they had come across, however, none came close to comparing with the silver divine dragon standing before them. It was only a Tier 4 infant dragon, yet the dragon might Auerbeck radiated made it difficult to move. Not even the Tier 5 dark magic dragon they had met could do this. To make matters worse, Auerbeck had mastered spatial imprisonment, which only a few Apex Tier 4 NPCs could master. The Hell Legion had no chance against such a foe. Once he landed, Auerbeck quietly observed the Hell Legion, and its members froze under the dragon's gaze. Auerbeck then approached the Legion as they watched his every step. The closer Auerbeck got, the stronger the pressure the Hell Legion members felt became. The Hell Legion's members began to regret their decision to come to the fortress, realizing they had acted a little too rashly. Had they judged the dragon's strength properly before causing a scene in the fortress, they wouldn't have been caught off guard. Wolf, your group will activate the mana barrier. Hell Rush shouted at the Tier 3 ranger beside him after seeing his teammates' growing despair. The rest of you will use that chance to retreat. Auerbeck was far stronger than he had expected, but Divine Tribe was dreaming if it thought it could corner the Hell Legion with one dragon. If any other superpower's trump card legion stood in the Hell Legion's place, they'd be helpless. But the Hell Legion wasn't just any legion. No ordinary super guild could match the legacies and ancient technology Netherworld Empire had obtained. The blue-clad ranger, Black Wolf, and the several players beside him gritted their teeth as they each pulled a dark gray crystal from their bags. They then began to chant an incantation. Dense mana radiated out from Black Wolf and his comrades. It formed a pitch-black barrier that swallowed the Hell Legion. Once the magic barrier had taken shape, the Hell Legion members were freed from Auerbach's spatial imprisonment. Hell Rush released a held breath in a deep, relieved sigh. He then commanded, "Good. Everyone, use your return scroll and retreat." The mana barrier was Netherworld Empire's greatest creation. This barrier couldn't suppress their enemies, but it would create a domain for a short time, freeing the players within from any restrictive effects. With the help of the mana barrier, players could even use return scrolls in areas that prohibited their use. Moreover, the defensive barrier would prevent anything from entering once active. The mana barrier was the best life-saving and defensive tool currently available in God's domain. Hell Rush had wanted to save the mana barrier for their assault on the Fortress Lord's mansion, but right now, he couldn't care less about that. With their commander's order echoing in their ears, the Legion's members retrieved their return scrolls and began to activate them. Meanwhile, Auerbach swiped at the barrier with a claw. Boom! A massive explosion shook the Starlight Fortress as Auerbach's claw collided with the mana barrier. However, the attack didn't even crack the barrier, much less shatter it. This scene left the nearby Divine Tribe members stupefied. They had never expected the Hell Legion to have such a powerful card. They had already witnessed the Silver Divine Dragon's strength. Ordinary Tier 4 mythics were children in comparison. And yet, the mana barrier remained intact even after taking a blow from the Divine Dragon. The barrier's defensive strength was even greater than the Starlight Fortress's walls when the magic array had been inactive. So what if you have a Tier 4 dragon? You're 100 years too early if you think you can make an example of the Hell Legions. Thunder Beast laughed when Auerbach failed to destroy the mana barrier. Alright, enough. The Starlight Fortress is much stronger than we initially anticipated. We need to revise our plan once we return, Hell Rush warned his teammates, realizing that Thunder Beast wanted to linger. He had wanted to show off the Hell Legion's power before Phythalia and Divine Tribe's other upper echelons, but he had never dreamed that their dragon would be so astoundingly strong. The Hell Legion hadn't suffered any casualties, but they had sacrificed an important magic array, which was a minor loss. Of course, this experience also showed the depths of the Starlight Fortress's defenses. Auerbach might be very powerful, but if Netherworld Empire planned its next move carefully, negotiating a partnership with Divine Tribe would still be possible. As Hell Rush and his companions were in the midst of activating their return scrolls, a voice called out to them. "You guys just got to the Starlight Fortress, why are you in such a hurry to leave?" With the question, space within the fortress seemed to shake. Following which, a phantom world washed over the fortress, isolating it from the outside world. While the phantom world took over, the mana barrier's domain waned. Although the barrier remained in place, the mana within began to corrode. A second later, the Hell Legion members discovered that mana had stopped flowing within their return scrolls, and as a result, the magic arrays under their feet began to crumble, eventually disappearing altogether. It stunned every member of the Hell Legion. What was going on? The mana barrier was still up, so why couldn't they teleport? Something's actually suppressed the mana barrier? Black Wolf, in particular, was stunned when he sensed that he no longer had control of the mana around him. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. The mana barrier could wrestle control of a specified space, even within a forbidden land that prevented teleportation. However, something had suppressed it and thoroughly. The Hell Legion members' plummeting basic attributes and physiques made this much clear. Understanding that they had missed their chance to teleport away from the Starlight Fortress, the Hell Legion's members couldn't help but turn toward the voice's origin. After this person had asked their question, their ability to teleport had been taken from them. The speaker must have something to do with that. The Hell Legion's members found that the voice had come from Auerbach's back. Due to the divine dragon's natural glow, they hadn't noticed the man, but squinting to see through the light, they discovered that someone was actually riding the divine dragon, standing on his back. "So, you're Zero Wings Guild leader, Black Flame?" Hell Rush asked, staring at the player perched on the silver divine dragon. Chapter 2478, True Foundations. Hell Rush's question stunned the rest of the Hell Legion in the mana barrier. They all stared at Xiaofan in astonishment. Is he really human? They had heard that Xiaofan had something to do with the silver divine dragon, but they had never thought that he would be capable of controlling it and be able to suppress the mana barrier. Having either power would overjoy any of God's domain superpowers. Both a dragon and a domain treasure would be incredibly useful when defending fortresses and rendering other superpowers' attacks useless. And now, they learned that Xiaofan had both. It was absurd. "That's correct, I'm Black Flame," Xiaofan replied, nodding. "I never could have guessed how much strength you've hidden. The various superpowers' heads are already aching over your dragon, yet your power isn't limited to the creature." Hell Rush could not help his bitter smile as he spoke to Xiaofan. The Hell Legion admits defeat. Although the mana barrier was still around them, and they had quite a few more to protect themselves from Auerbach, the magic arrays were meaningless if they couldn't teleport out of the Starlight Fortress. It would only be a matter of time before they ran out of mana barriers. Without the barrier to protect them, they wouldn't have a hope of escaping the divine dragon. As for trying to face Auerbach in battle, that would be futile. They could barely move under the infant dragon's dragon might, much less fight. In other words, the Hell Legion was utterly at Xiaofan's mercy. Rather than waste time with pretenses, Hell Rush thought it wise to surrender. However, after his statement, he and his team heard a clear, soft voice. "Commander Rush, I'm afraid we have a misunderstanding. I invited you here at Guild Leader Black Flame's request. Since you are the Starlight Fortress's esteemed guest, Black Flame decided to welcome you personally." Another figure stood from her position on Auerbach's back. It was Phythalia, the Divine Him Legion's commander. "Welcome us?" Hell Rush rolled his eyes. Why would anyone use a dragon to welcome guests? Not only had Xiaofan arrived on the back of his dragon, but he had also used a domain tool. Did they really consider this a proper welcome? The rest of the Hell Legion glared at Phythalia. Even a fool would recognize this display as a warning. However, they had no choice but to endure the act. "This isn't a suitable place for our conversation, Commander Rush. Let's continue inside the Fortress Lord's mansion," Xiaofan said, unconcerned with whether Hell Rush believed Phythalia or not. He then leaped off of Auerbach and cancelled Miniature World before leading his guests toward the mansion. The Hell Legion's several vice commanders looked toward their leader, wondering how Hell Rush would respond. "Since we're already here, we might as well talk," Hell Rush muttered to his vice commanders. He couldn't tell what Xiaofan was after, and the swordsman currently held the Hell Legion's fate in his hands. Hence, he decided to concede. Hell Rush then followed Xiaofan to the Starlight Fortress's Fortress Lord's mansion. Meanwhile, his vice commanders instructed the rest of the Legion's members to find a place to rest before they followed. When Hell Rush and his entourage walked toward the Fortress Lord's mansion, located in the fortress's core, they were shocked. As they grew closer to the mansion, they could feel the mana growing denser. They sensed that the mana around them had already become 30% denser when they were only halfway to their destination. A 30% increase could raise their training efficiency with combat techniques, skills, and spells by at least 50%, and it would be particularly prominent when practicing advanced and bronze combat techniques. Training in this environment would yield even better results than when they trained in the mana-dense secret lands under Netherworld Empire's control. Huh? What is that place? Hell Rush asked, noticing an ancient tower a short distance away from the Fortress Lord's mansion. The tower only had 5 floors, but the concentration of mana around it was second only to the Fortress Lord's mansion. Even in the Starlight Fortress's high mana environment, the tower stood out like a shining beacon. That's the fortress prison, Phythalia explained. It's where we intend to keep players who cause trouble, similar to the prisons in NPC cities. It's the same as the prisons in NPC cities? Hell Rush wore a grim expression after hearing Phythalia's answer. His vice-commanders stared at the ancient tower in horror. If they died within the fortress, they would, at most, lose a level and a piece of equipment. With the Hell Legion's strength, they could recover from the losses in no time. But none of them wanted to face imprisonment after a death. That outcome would be even worse than if they died 3 or 4 times in a row. Time was more important than money in God's domain, especially for frontline players. Opportunity waited for no man. They would only have the highest chances of growing stronger by maintaining their positions at the forefront of the game's player base, and they might even find a rare opportunity that could change their fates. If they were stuck in jail for 5 or 6 days, however, they'd fall behind, and catching up would be insanely difficult. A dragon? A domain tool? Those were insignificant compared to the fortress prison. Auerbach might be able to annihilate the Hell Legion with the help of a domain tool, but the Legion's members would recover to their peak in 3 or 4 days. They might even become stronger than they had been. Spending a handful of days in the prison, on the other hand, would cripple the Legion. Catching up would take at least 1 to 2 months. The fortress prison alone was more than enough to deter any power from assaulting the Starlight Fortress. While Hell Rush and his vice-commanders secretly plotted to investigate the fortress prison, they arrived at the mansion. The Fortress Lord's mansion was now fully repaired and looked like a castle from a fantasy novel. An ancient, mysterious aura surrounded the castle, and the ambient mana within its vicinity was mesmerizing. There was simply no comparison between the mana here and the mana in the rest of the fortress. For a moment, Hell Rush and the others even had the urge to stay for the rest of their lives. Guild leader Black Flame, may I know what business you have with us? If you'd like to discuss something, please, get to the point. I'm not fond of posturing and word games, Hell Rush told Xiaofan seriously. Hell Rush now had a good understanding of the Starlight Fortress's situation. In his opinion, capturing or causing a ruckus in the fortress was simply impossible for the various superpowers, including Netherworld Empire. He couldn't think of a reason that Xiaofan would specifically invite the Hell Legion to talk. Now that you've seen the Starlight Fortress for yourselves, I'm sure you're quite interested in the fortress. I've asked you here to negotiate an alliance. Although I can't offer a temporary residence, I would like to offer Netherworld Empire's members a 40% discount on all basic expenditures within the Starlight Fortress, Xiaofan explained, chuckling. 40%? Are you serious? The offer instantly tempted Hell Rush. Star Valley was a forbidden land far away from civilization, and travel to the map was incredibly inconvenient. This was precisely the reason that Netherworld Empire wanted the Starlight Fortress's sole temporary residence. If his guild could secure a residence within Star Valley, Netherworld Empire's members could teleport to the Forbidden Land, saving plenty of travel time and coins. Although not having a temporary residence would be inconvenient, a 40% discount on all basic expenditures within this fortress would allow Netherworld Empire to save a ton on development costs. Basic expenditures weren't limited to facilities, such as hotels. Entrance fees would be included, as well, which players had to pay every time they wanted to enter the fortress. The discount wouldn't be a major issue if Netherworld Empire only wished to send a few hundred players, but if the guild sent thousands, a 40% discount could save them an astronomical amount of money. Of course. Xiaofan nodded. What do you need us to do? Hell Rush asked. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU with the Fortress Prison, the Starlight Fortress's operations would be unshakable. Logically, Zero Wing and Divine Tribe shouldn't need Netherworld Empire's help to safeguard the fortress. I wish to borrow the entire Hell Legion for a mission. Xiaofan declared. Borrow the Hell Legion? Hell Rush stared at the swordsman in confusion. What do you want us to do? Zero Wing had already allied with Divine Tribe, which was a super first-rate guild and even stronger than some super guilds. It was no exaggeration to claim that Divine Tribe could deal with most matters in the West with relative ease. Zero Wing shouldn't need the Hell Legion's strength for anything. It's nothing major. I only wish to enter Star Valley's God Mode regional dungeon to retrieve an item, Xiaofan stated calmly. Chapter 2479, Starlight's shocking transformation. Everyone was stunned when they heard Xiaofan's goal. None of them had ever thought he'd be crazy enough to enter Star Valley's God Mode regional dungeon. Not only was God Mode the highest difficulty for a regional dungeon in God's domain, but the dungeon in Star Valley was also a level 100+ regional dungeon. Although the dungeon had abundant resources to offer, it had dangers far beyond what current players faced in the outside world. A few superpowers had sent Tier 3 teams into the dungeon not long ago, but in the end, they had been forced to retreat after less than 30 minutes inside and lost half their members. After those losses, the various superpowers temporarily gave up on the dungeon. The dungeon wasn't only dangerous because of the extremely powerful monsters within, but because of its harsh environment. Once in the regional dungeon, players would face a much higher gravitational force. Even Tier 3 players struggled to move under such pressure. To make matters worse, the monsters that called the dungeon home had high combat standards. Guild leader Black Flame, I wish I could agree to your offer, but the Star Tomb is no place for current players. Our basic attributes may remain the same inside, but that place significantly limits our mobility. Just fighting the level 105 Great Lords in the dungeon is a massive challenge, not to mention the level 105 Grand Lords, Hell Rush explained after taking a deep breath. Although Xiaofang's offer was wildly tempting, the idea of entering the Star Tomb was a joke. While inside the Star Tomb, Tier 3 players' mobility would be reduced to Tier 1 standards, and to make matters worse, the increased gravity didn't affect the dungeon's monsters. And that wasn't all. Most importantly, players' stamina consumption would skyrocket during combat in such a high-gravity environment. If players ventured too far into the Star Tomb, they could lose their lives due to stamina depletion. Moreover, players couldn't teleport out of the regional dungeon, even with Netherworld Empire's mana barrier. If they weren't very careful, they could easily team wipe. I understand your concerns, Commander Rush, but if we succeed, I'm willing to reserve 8 of the mana training rooms in the Fortress Lord's Mansion for Netherworld Empire. Of course, we'll calculate the fees separately, Xiaofan informed his guest with a chuckle. I'm sure you've sensed how dense the mana is in the mansion, but the mana training rooms have even denser mana. Aside from securing various rare materials, there was another reason that Xiaofan had traveled to the Western continent. He wanted the Star of Light. Without the Star of Light, he had no chance of revitalizing the Tree of Life's withered main branch. The Star of Light was a legendary material that was only available on the Western continent. To be precise, it could only be found within the Star Tomb. Based on the information he had from the past, 3 of the Star Tomb Stars of Light had dropped while players had explored the regional dungeon for the first time. With the Star Tomb untouched, this was the perfect opportunity to secure one for himself. If he missed this opportunity, his chances of obtaining the legendary material would be miserably low by the time he organized another expedition to the west. To enter the regional dungeon, players had to have reached Tier 3 at the very least. Players couldn't enter until then. Moreover, a 100-man team wouldn't be nearly enough to explore the dungeon. Xiaofan would need at least 500 players to pull off his plan. Unfortunately, organizing a team of 500 Tier 3 players would be incredibly difficult at this stage of the game. Thus far, only the 5 great super guilds could manage it. Hence, Xiaofan had asked Phythalia to invite Hell Rush to negotiate a deal. The mana training room? Hell Rush's eyes glowed when Xiaofan offered the additional benefit. When he had entered the Fortress Lord's mansion, he had sensed the extraordinary mana within. It was, by far, the most mana-dense location he had ever visited. If Netherworld Empire's experts could train in the mansion, their efficiency would skyrocket. Yet, Xiaofan had just told him that the mana training rooms had even denser mana. If such an astounding training environment truly existed, they could develop their mana control and unlock their mana bodies with unprecedented speed. Please, take your time to consider the offer carefully, Commander Rush. If we encounter a situation within the Star Tomb that we cannot overcome, you may retreat, and the benefits I offer will remain yours, Xiaofan clarified. Your offer will still stand? Hell Rush could not ignore the temptation. Then, I agree. However, if my team risks annihilation, we will pull back immediately. If you can accept that condition, we're willing to work with you. Hell Rush wasn't sure what Xiaofang's goal was, but he couldn't afford to reject the offer. Mana was the root of all things on the Western continent, which the various powers desperately fought for. Since capturing the Starlight Fortress was now impossible, he had to aim for the next best thing, and the mana training rooms would allow his guild's experts to unlock their mana bodies far sooner. Once they did, Netherworld Empire would be able to surpass the 2 of the other 5 great super guilds based in the West when it came to experts with fully unlocked mana bodies. That won't be a problem, Xiaofan answered. He could sympathize with Hell Rush. The Star Tomb was, after all, a level 100+ God mode regional dungeon and, as such, far more dangerous than the outside world. The various superpowers had suffered severe losses to clear the Star Tomb during his previous life, and that was after they had formed the minimum 500-man teams. Luckily, the current Hell Legion would be more than enough for his purposes. His goal wasn't to explore all of the Star Tomb, just obtain a Star of Light. The Star of Light was a random drop in the Star Tomb, which meant that even the weakest monsters had a chance of dropping it. Raiding the dungeon's bosses wouldn't be necessary. Adventurer teams had claimed 3 of the regional dungeon Stars of Light in the past, and all 3 teams had done so in the tomb's outer region. Those adventurer teams had merely been grinding for magic crystals, but they had lucked out and acquired Stars of Light instead, becoming rich overnight. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Since no one had explored the Star Tomb yet, they should have a high likelihood of obtaining at least 1 Star of Light. Following which, Xiaofan signed a contract with Hell Rush stating that Netherworld Empire's members would enjoy a 40% discount on the Starlight Fortress's basic expenditures. In addition, 8 of the Fortress Lord's mana training rooms would be reserved for the guild, with each costing 300 magic crystals per hour. In exchange, Xiaofan would have temporary command of the Hell Legion once they were inside the Star Tomb, and this would remain in effect until Xiaofan completed his task or the team encountered more trouble than they could handle. In addition, Netherworld Empire would dispatch experts to defend the Starlight Fortress alongside Zero Wing and Divine Tribe. Once they had signed the contract, the alliance between Zero Wing and Netherworld Empire was set in stone. Not long after, news of their partnership spread like the plague, reaching the various superpowers in no time at all. This ignited a commotion among the various superpowers that had aimed to take the Starlight Fortress. Chapter 2480, Starlight Fortress Unsealed. What did you say? The Hell Legion agreed? Impossible. The Hell Legion has 300 Tier 3 experts, and every one of them is a lunatic. When the various superpowers received news of the Hell Legion's decision, they found it hard to believe. They had assumed the Starlight Fortress was doomed once the Hell Legion had gotten involved. Even if they didn't capture the fortress, they were sure to leave it in ruins. They were all familiar with what kind of team the Hell Legion was. It was a team of madmen. The Starlight Fortress might be impressive for its dragon guard, but after all was said and done, it only had one dragon. One dragon wasn't nearly enough to keep all 300 Hell Legion members in check. They weren't ordinary Tier 3 experts, and as long as they had a chance of victory, they'd repeatedly resurrect their members and assault the Starlight Fortress until only one side remained. This was why the various superpowers were so afraid of the Hell Legion. And yet, the situation had developed in such an unexpected way. The Hell Legion hadn't even started a decent battle, much less taken the fortress. The Legion had actually allied with the ruling power after a short discussion. Moreover, the Hell Legion had agreed to a partnership that didn't include shares of the fortress. The various superpowers' upper echelons even wondered if the reports were about the Hell Legion they knew so well. While the news spread, the various superpowers, who had been preparing to assault the Starlight Fortress, hesitated. They had only dared to target the Starlight Fortress because Netherworld Empire had expressed interest in capturing it, but now that the Super Guild had joined the fortress's ruling power, the situation had become disastrous for the various superpowers. These superpowers weren't afraid of Divine Tribe. The guild only had a few more Tier 3 experts than the rest of them. If they joined forces, however, they could easily outnumber Divine Tribe, and since the Starlight Fortress only provided players partial authority, capturing it would be child's play. But now that Netherworld Empire had allied with Divine Tribe, causing a scene in the fortress would be difficult and dangerous. Aside from the Legion members' individual strength, the Hell Legion had enough Tier 3 players that it could rival the total number in several superpowers. Including the dragon, how were the various superpowers supposed to cause enough chaos to take the fortress from Divine Tribe? Of course, these superpowers weren't willing to give up just yet. Although they knew that securing a share of the Starlight Fortress's profits was no longer possible, they still sent a large number of experts to investigate the situation within. The fortress benefits were related to too many of their interests, and they would jump at any opportunity to gain a fraction of what the Starlight Fortress had to offer. Meanwhile, in the Azure Chamber of Commerce's distant demonic silver mine. Even the Hell Legion has failed? Yan Xiaoqian muttered, stunned after reading her subordinate's report. She had already been astonished to learn that Xiaofan and Divine Tribe had cooperated to capture the Starlight Fortress. Then, she had heard about the fortress's draconic resident. And now, even the fearsome Hell Legion had compromised. If she hadn't known anything about Xiaofang's group, she would have assumed they belonged to some hidden superpower that developed in the Western continent's shadows. However, she knew more than a little about that group of players. Xiaofan had arrived on the Western continent with 9 companions, all members of Zero Wing. When they had arrived, Zero Wing hadn't had a single ally in the West. Yet, not only had Xiaofang's group established a foothold in the West after only a few days, but they had even gained 2 powerful allies. The Azure Chamber of Commerce had spent over a month establishing itself in the East. The chamber had only made a place for itself in the Dark Hills, outside of the Fire Dragon Empire's border, after investing tons of resources and manpower in the endeavor. Moreover, the Azure had only accomplished its goal because it had gathered players and secured connections on the Eastern continent early in the game. If it hadn't, securing a foothold in the East would have taken much longer. Xiaofan, however, had secured the Starlight Fortress in less than 4 days, driving the Western continent's various superpowers crazy. Young miss, we don't have much time left before the competition between families. The family has already ensured that you'll have use of the trial grounds. They hope you will cherish the opportunity and restore the reputation the family lost during the prior competition. Please don't let other matters distract you, an amiable old man advised, sitting next to Yan Xiaoqian in one of the mine's lounges. I understand. Zero Wing merely has a foothold in the West and access to more resources now. It still isn't nearly powerful enough to help Silent Wonder win the family's annual competition, Yan Xiaoqian said, nodding. Once she had calmed her flustered heart, her confidence returned. Zero Wing might now have a place on the Western continent, but whether or not it could develop in the West was a different matter entirely. The guild's greatest enemy wasn't the Western continent's various superpowers, but the demonic creature armies. As a forbidden land, no kingdom or empire protected Star Valley. In other words, the Starlight Fortress would face the full brunt of the demonic creature armies without NPC help. It was easy to imagine how much danger the fortress was in. Even if Divine Tribe and Netherworld Empire cooperated, they couldn't necessarily protect the fortress from the demonic creature's invasion. Even if Zero Wing defended its hold on the Starlight Fortress, that had nothing to do with helping Silent Wonder. The guild's foundation in the west was newborn, and the Western continent's training grounds were superior to those in the east. In that case, young miss, we should go, the old man insisted. She nodded in response, but she couldn't help but gaze toward Star Valley. Just you wait. I will not let Silent Wonder defeat me in this competition. Yan Xiaoqian inwardly swore, recalling Shifeng's utter disregard for her and Azure before leaving the demonic silver mine. Her family had paid a huge price to get her access to the trial grounds. This was an opportunity that few in God's domain could enjoy. As long as she could complete the trial, she could even defeat Shifeng, let alone Silent Wonder. While Yan Xiaoqian left the demonic silver mine atop her flying mount, Shifeng led the Hell Legion to Star Valley's inner region. Even Tier 3 players could lose their lives in the Star Valley's outer region, to say nothing of the level 100+ Forbidden Lands inner area. The lowest leveled monsters in the inner region were level 110, and they generally moved in groups with Grand Lord leaders. Each of these groups consisted of over 1,000 monsters, with some of the larger groups having 2,000 or 3,000. They were practically roaming armies. If a 100-man Tier 3 team encountered these monsters, the slightest mistake could lead to a team wipe. Fortunately, the Hell Legion's members were extraordinarily strong, and there were 300 of them. They could venture through the inner region in relative safety, although their progress was incredibly slow. After more than 10 hours of travel, Shifeng and his team reached the inner region's boundary. They could see a gigantic mountain not far from their position on the inner region's border. The mountain's aura felt boundless, and those who approached could feel their bodies grow heavier. The closer one got to the base of the mountain, the stronger the sensation became. This was none other than Star Valley's God Mode regional dungeon, the Star Tomb. Consider this carefully, Guild Leader Black Flame. Do you really want to go in there? Once we're inside, leaving will be a challenge, and if players die, they won't resurrect outside of the dungeon, Hell Rush warned Shifeng as he stared at the mountain before them. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. The Star Tomb was a very special location. When players normally died, they'd resurrect in the nearest NPC town or city, but that wasn't the case in the Star Tomb. No matter how many times players died, they'd only return to life within the dungeon. I understand. Let's head in. Shifeng was quite familiar with the Star Tomb's peculiarities, yet he walked into the regional dungeon with no hesitation. Hell Legion's members only glanced at each other before helplessly following the swordsman. Shortly after Shifeng and his team entered the Star Tomb, the Starlight Fortress in Star Valley's outer region lit with a bright glow as the seal was finally removed. The Starlight Fortress had opened to the public. Chapter 2481, Fortress of Astronomical Value. Quick, look! The Starlight Fortress is open. It's finally open. I've been waiting for this moment. The various superpowers and independent players in the nearby forest immediately noticed the dazzling glow that enveloped the Starlight Fortress. They had been waiting for the fortress to open to the public, especially the independent players. They all had great expectations. Independent players were unaware of Netherworld Empire's agreement, but some of Divine Tribe's members had leaked information about the situation within the Starlight Fortress. When they finally got to see the fortress's many benefits, the various independent players caused an uproar. Aside from the fortress's mana-dense environment, which would help them quickly recover from exhaustion, the fact that they could improve their mana control just by visiting the fortress made it far more impressive than any NPC city on the western continent. Furthermore, the Starlight Fortress was located within Star Valley. Now that they could enter the fortress, they could grind in the Forbidden Land, boosting their leveling speed and resource acquisition. Naturally, they couldn't miss the opportunity to set up a base of operations within the Starlight Fortress. Although the various superpowers had dispatched many of their players, they were no match for the number of independent players eagerly waiting to enter the fortress. The independent players, who had been resting in the forest, charged toward the Starlight Fortress like a flood of madmen. Despite their imposing might, not even the various superpowers experts reached the fortress before the tide of independent players. However, the scene didn't enrage the superpowers, they were actually overjoyed to see it. I hadn't expected to find so many Tier 3 experts in the area. I doubt Netherworld Empire and Divine Tribe expected so many players, either. This is going to be interesting. Even Netherworld Empire's Hell Legion would be helpless against so many Tier 3 experts. When the various superpowers' upper echelons saw the independent players swarm toward the Starlight Fortress, excitement flashed in their eyes. They had begun to believe that they had no hope of causing chaos within the fortress. After all, Netherworld Empire's Hell Legion was not just for decoration. They hadn't expected a situation like this, and they had never imagined that independent players would be so interested in the Starlight Fortress. There were already more than 5,000 Tier 3 independent players, not to mention the Tier 2 players. There were more of them than those in the various superpowers combined. Even if Netherworld Empire went all out, they had no hope of defending the fortress against such a force, let alone Divine Tribe. Before the superpowers' upper echelons could celebrate, however, a dragon with silver scales flew out of the Starlight Fortress and landed beside the front gate, quietly observing the approaching horde of independent players. The excited independent players froze on the spot when they saw Auerbeck, none of them dared to move. The sudden development even stupefied the various superpowers watching from afar. They were talking about 5,000 Tier 3 experts. And yet, every one of them acted like a mouse before a cat. Of course, the various superpowers experts could sympathize. Auerbeck's aura was just that frightening. Even from far away, they felt as if the weight of a mountain had rested on their shoulders. Needless to say, the independent players, who were much closer to the Silver Divine Dragon, felt an even stronger pressure. Is that really just a Tier 4 dragon? The various superpowers experts were at a loss for words as they stared at Auerbeck. They had realized that Auerbeck was exceptionally strong after the Hell Legion had fled from it, but seeing the Divine Dragon in person, they understood how mistaken they had been. This was not a matter of strength. No one should be so foolish as to provoke Auerbeck. The Starlight Fortress is now open to the public. If you wish to enter the fortress, listen carefully. All combat is prohibited within the fortress walls. Not only will you be slain if you break this rule, but you'll also be imprisoned for 8 days in the fortress prison. McCaffrey, who stood on the wall above the main gate, announced as he gazed at the players below. If nobody has any questions, you may register to enter the fortress. As McCaffrey finished his statement, the nearby players' expressions changed. The announcement dumbfounded the various superpowers members, in particular. Fortress prison? What is he talking about? The superpowers' upper echelons, who had laughed at the Starlight Fortress's latest predicament, could no longer muster the strength to laugh. They were familiar with the concept of God's domain's prisons. Once players were jailed, they'd have to serve their time unless someone destroyed the prison from the outside. It was this moment when the various superpowers understood, more or less, why Netherworld Empire had decided to compromise. With a fortress prison around, who would dare cause a scene in the fortress? The various superpowers began to despair when McCaffrey began to speak once more. Due to the fortress's limited space, players may only remain inside for one natural day. Each consecutive day you spend in the fortress will cost one magic crystal. In addition, all basic services the fortress offers cost magic crystals. If you fail to pay for the services you've requested, you will also spend 8 days in the prison. Please keep this in mind during your stay. After listening to McCaffrey's speech, every player in the area was stunned again. Normally, the various powers did everything they could to increase a fortress's player population after capturing one, which, in turn, would transform the fortress into a trade hub. This would also give the ruling power access to a huge amount of resources, yet the Starlight Fortress's owner had decided against that. They showed no regard for attracting players to the fortress. The entrance fee alone cost a whopping 20 silver per person, and players were only allowed to spend a day in the fortress. Once that day was up, every additional day would cost a magic crystal. To make matters worse, they had to pay magic crystals for the services within the fortress. This was basically daylight robbery. Only a fool would enter the fortress. On the Western continent, magic crystals were incredibly rare, which made them far more valuable than coins. Moreover, most high-value transactions involved magic crystals. Tier 2 experts would be fortunate to earn 3 or 4 magic crystals per day, and Tier 3 experts only earned around a dozen. After deducting daily expenses, they'd be lucky if they kept half of their remaining magic crystals. With how the Starlight Fortress operated, Tier 2 experts had no hope of setting up a base within the fortress. Are the fortress's managers insane? Their greed for magic crystals certainly is. It's already obvious that no one on the continent has a chance of taking the fortress. The fortress can slowly develop and grow without worry, and yet they're chasing people away. I can't wait to see how they'll survive against the demonic creature armies. The situation even stunned the various superpowers. They couldn't fathom what Xiaofan and the others were thinking. If they had so many magic crystals to spare, they might as well spend them in the Divine Colosseum's trial tower. Moreover, players could afford a luxury meal, which would help them recover from exhaustion far faster than within a mana-dense environment, with 20 silver to spend. In truth, the pricing had left McCaffrey speechless when he had heard it, but Xiaofan had insisted that the fortress would only conduct business using magic crystals. So, he couldn't do anything about it. The Starlight Fortress belonged entirely to Zero Wing, after all. Divine Tribe was only helping manage it. While some powers and players left in a huff, a 500-man team watched the events unfold from a short distance away from the main gate. "Are we still going in, Commander?" a ruthless, level 106 man asked the robust man in leather armor next to him. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. The robust man was Crow, the Stormheart Adventurer team's commander. "Of course. We might as well take a look since we're here," Crow said, gritting his teeth. The 20 silver entrance fee wasn't a major concern for Stormheart, but the fact that the fortress's basic amenities cost magic crystals wasn't something Stormheart could afford to play with. But Crow's curiosity was too strong to ignore. Thus, he decided to go in and look around. At worst, they'd have paid the entrance fee for nothing. Having given his answer, Crow led his team toward the Starlight Fortress's front gate. Chapter 2482, Mana Changes. Once Stormheart's members paid the exorbitant entrance fee, they carefully walked through the front gate under Auerbach's watchful eye. What? Some players are actually willing to pay such a fraudulent fee? Maybe they've decided to do some sightseeing since they've already gone to the effort of reaching the fortress. The players that had been preparing to leave the area watched Crow and his team with contempt as they entered the Starlight Fortress. A 20 silver entrance fee was unheard of on the Western continent. With 20 silver, a player could fully repair their weapons and equipment in an NPC city. Some Tier 2 players only made that much after a full day of grinding. Yet, Storm Hearts members were investing so much money just to sightsee or experience the fortress's mana-dense environment. Moreover, they could only spend one day in the fortress. They were foolish to waste their money like that. After spending a moment to ridicule Stormheart, the surrounding players packed up and left. It wasn't long before 90% of the players around the Starlight Fortress left the area. Now, less than 10,000 players remained in line at the front gate. They've already secured their hold on the Starlight Fortress, yet they're chasing away customers. We won't have to lift a finger to ensure the fortress's demise. They want to charge magic crystals for all basic expenditures made inside the fortress? They certainly know how to dream. How foolish. Do they really think they can squeeze players for all they've got just because the Starlight Fortress is the only open fortress in Star Valley? The various superpowers' upper echelons couldn't help but laugh when they saw how few players were willing to enter the Starlight Fortress. They had been afraid that the fortress would make some bold move to widen the gap between them, but it seemed their concerns had been meaningless. 20 silver to enter a fortress was a high price to pay, but many expert players could tolerate the cost. With the resources available in Star Valley and the Starlight Fortress's benefits, they could easily earn back the coins and more. However, the Starlight Fortress had crossed the line by charging magic crystals for its basic services. On the Western continent, magic crystals were players' foundation. Without magic crystals for their combat runes, players' combat power would decrease significantly. Unfortunately, as luck would have it, magic crystals were painfully rare in the West. Obtaining a single magic crystal was a challenge. If it weren't so difficult, the continent's various powers wouldn't fight so desperately over veins that had a chance of producing magic crystals. Although players could obtain magic crystals by grinding in Star Valley, it wasn't easy. Star Valley was still a level 100, plus Forbidden Land and far more dangerous than other maps where magic crystals dropped. If a player decided to focus their development around the fortress, they'd only be cheap labor for the ruling power. Only a fool would accept that burden. Following which, the various superpowers' upper echelons commanded their teams to turn around and leave. They had no intention of entering the Starlight Fortress. They had learned of the fortress's situation from the spies they had planted in Divine Tribe before the Starlight Fortress had opened to the public. They had no reason to enter the fortress to verify the reports. They'd only be handing over their hard-earned coins by doing so. McCaffrey felt frustrated as he watched so many players walk away from his position on the fortress's wall. Those players were potential money and resources. Xiaofan could have easily transformed the Starlight Fortress into a prosperous trade hub by lowering his prices, yet he had insisted on charging magic crystals for all basic services. That condition alone had deterred the majority of players from visiting the fortress. While the various superpowers walked away from the Starlight Fortress, the Stormheart Adventurer team had made it inside. So, this is the Starlight Fortress? The mana density is so high. It's no wonder why the entrance fee is so exorbitant. This environment is certainly worth the price. Stormheart's members were mesmerized when they sensed the ambient mana within the Starlight Fortress. They were not members of the various superpowers, just independent players. Even if they were a part of a top adventurer team, they could only get their hands on limited resources. The resources Stormheart possessed couldn't even compare to that of first-rate guilds. Needless to say, they didn't have access to mana-abundant locations, either. They had to rely on their exceptional talent and hard work to develop slowly. We'll only be able to rest here from time to time. We can't afford to go bankrupt, the ruthless man beside Crow said as he glanced at the pricing boards outside the nearby hotels. Even in NPC kingdoms and empires' capital cities, the most expensive, luxurious hotel room only cost 10 silver per night. However, not only were the hotel rooms in the Starlight Fortress small, but they were also astonishingly expensive. A room actually cost 1 magic crystal per night. Their team currently had 500 players. If they rented hotel rooms for the night, they'd have to pay a total of 500 magic crystals. The rest of Stormheart's members could only nod in agreement. Not even first-rate guilds could afford such a costly expenditure, let alone Stormheart. Only superpowers would have the funds to rent these hotel rooms. Wait. The mana here is different somehow, a Tier 3 female elementalist suddenly spoke up. Different? Curious, the ruthless man began to pay more attention to the mana around him, but he failed to find anything unusual about it. How is it different? No. She's right. Crow exclaimed. To be precise, this area has different types of elemental mana. I can sense the 3 supreme elements, and the mana is growing even denser, the female elementalist explained. Ordinary Tier 3 experts would likely struggle to sense the differences in the ambient mana, but she had a special mana legacy, which allowed her to notice the minute oddity. The 3 supreme elements? The ruthless man was stunned. Excitedly, he asked, doesn't that mean that this fortress's environment is similar to the environment of ancient times? Experts constantly researched and tried to understand more about God's domain's current affairs and history every day. The information hid many opportunities, and for independent players and adventurer teams, who lacked resources, this was one of the few reliable ways to encounter fortuitous opportunities. Naturally, Stormheart and its members were no exception. In fact, their knowledge of God's domain was vast, especially regarding the ancient area when gods had still roamed the land. The ancient era had been the peak of God's domain. Humankind had been far more powerful then. Ancient human civilizations had developed their individual strength and technology to unbelievable levels. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU. In comparison, current humans hit their limit after reaching Tier 5. Moreover, most Tier 5 powerhouses nowadays were far weaker than those of the past. The biggest difference between the past and the present was the composition of ambient mana. During ancient times, ambient mana had been composed of all 7 elements, but now, it only included the 4 major elements. The remaining 3 supreme elements could only be found in certain locations and in almost negligible amounts. This was why God's domain's creatures couldn't fully comprehend and control mana, which made it harder to reach new tiers. And yet, within the Starlight Fortress, the 3 supreme elements had gathered, creating an environment reminiscent of ancient times. This was a heaven-defying opportunity. Chapter 2483, Hidden Madness. As soon as the ruthless man finished speaking, excitement flashed in his Tier 3 comrade's eyes. If the Starlight Fortress's environment were reminiscent of ancient times, consisting of all 7 elements, it would be a true paradise for players. Not only would players have a much easier time controlling mana in such an environment, but it would also help them unlock their mana bodies. After giving the matter some thought, Crow turned to the Tier 3 female elementalist beside him and said, "Rose, return to headquarters and gather all of the magic crystals we have. Send someone to ask around about renting a hotel here, as well. We'll be using it as Stormheart's temporary base. From now on, Stormheart's Tier 3 members will develop out of the Starlight Fortress." Although living in the Starlight Fortress was costly, if the benefits allowed one to improve their mana control and unlock their mana body's potential with ease, it was worth the price. It would even be worthwhile if the adventurer team had to invest every magic crystal it had earned thus far and would earn in the future. Levels weren't the top priority for Tier 3 players right now. Rather, unlocking their mana body's full potential was far more important. A Tier 3 player could only exhibit the true strength of Tier 3 once they did so. Residing in the Starlight Fortress would accelerate the process of unlocking their mana bodies, which was a unique, massive benefit. The rest of God's domain's players hadn't realized this yet, which gave Stormheart the opportunity to establish a base in the fortress. If they waited until the various guilds noticed, finding a place and developing in the Starlight Fortress would become far more difficult for the adventurer team. In terms of money and resources, Stormheart wasn't even a match for first-rate guilds, much less superpowers. Understood. I'll have someone look into it immediately, the female elementalist in blue, Ice Rose, replied before breaking away from the rest of the group. While Stormheart secretly took action, other Tier 3 independent players, who had entered the fortress and were particularly sensitive to mana, did the same. For a time, something strange took place within the nearly empty Starlight Fortress. Despite barely any players visiting the fortress, its hotels were booked, one after another. Moreover, all of the rooms were rented long-term, stunning the ignorant visiting players and McCaffrey. Players could earn a 10% discount when renting hotel rooms long-term, but they'd have to reserve the room for a minimum of 10 days. This meant that players had to pay 9 magic crystals per room, with each day normally costing 1 magic crystal. Including the fact that all of the fortress's basic amenities cost magic crystals, the cost was even extravagant to Tier 3 experts. Regardless, nearly 100 players had rented rooms in the Starlight Fortress long-term. Some players had even rented out an entire hotel. As a result, the fortress had earned nearly 5,000 magic crystals in less than an hour after its grand opening, and the crystals continued to roll in. Meanwhile, inside the Star Tomb, Xiaofan and his team ventured farther into the Star Tomb, and the Hell Legion faced one bitter battle after another. Even Tier 3 experts struggled to move within the regional dungeon, their mobility reduced to that of Tier 1 players. Fortunately, their basic attributes hadn't been affected. The reduced mobility had, however, considerably limited everyone's individual combat power. In the outside world, every member of the Hell Legion could solo a level 105 Great Lord, but in the Star Tomb, they could barely defeat a level 105 High Lord. The Earthen giants in the regional dungeon's outer region typically moved in groups consisting of several hundred, with each having at least 100 Great Lords. These small armies were an extraordinary challenge for the Hell Legion. Every time they encountered a group of monsters, the Legion spent over an hour to defeat them, and once the battle was over, they had to retrieve their tents to recover their lost stamina. If they didn't take the time to rest, their chances of defeating the next monster army would plummet. Naturally, this slowed their leveling speed to a crawl. However, the Hell Legion members had to admit that the God Mode regional dungeon was a wonderful location. Not only was the monsters' drop rate impressive, but the loot they acquired was top quality as well. One would have to slay Grand Lords for the slightest chance of obtaining secret silver weapons and equipment in the outside world, but in the Star Tomb, they could slay Great Lords to acquire the same ranked items. Furthermore, the dungeon's Great Lords had a chance of dropping level 105 secret silver set equipment. After over 20 hours of battle in the Star Tomb, the Hell Legion had completed 2 secret blue sets and 1 thorn set. The secret blue set was a set equipment for magical classes, while the thorn set catered to plate armor classes. Although both were only 6-piece, level 105 secret silver set equipment, they were definitely considered top tier in an era when most guild experts hadn't yet reached level 105, even the Hell Legion's members coveted the set equipment. Although the weakest piece of equipment among them was level 105 secret silver rank, with a few players having level 105 fine gold and dark gold equipment, the benefits of a complete secret silver set equipment were slightly greater than the items they currently wore. If they were willing to part with the set equipment, they could easily demand astronomical prices. Star Tomb's monsters also dropped plenty of magic crystals and mana stones. The Legion had even acquired 3 combat techniques and Tier 2 skill books. Unfortunately, the Hell Legion had entered an agreement with Xiaofan before they had entered the regional dungeon. Since Xiaofan had employed the Legion for this expedition, all loot they acquired would belong to him. The Hell Legion would only gain EXP within the dungeon. Guild leader Black Flame, "We found the path to the Star Tomb's 2nd floor ahead," Hell Rush reported, gesturing to a massive tunnel not far from the team. "The monsters in the area are too concentrated, however, and there are a few Grand Lords in the mix. Pushing past them is impossible. I'm afraid we'll be limited to this area. The Star Tomb's interior had a similar structure to a tower, separated into multiple floors. Each floor was the size of a level 15 map in the outside world, was more difficult to clear than the last. As players ascended, they'd also be subjected to higher gravitational force. None of the various superpowers had made it past the central area of the Star Tomb's first floor, near the passage to the second. Reaching the second floor proved almost impossible for current players. To make matters worse, players couldn't use summoning tools or war weapons in the Star Tomb. They couldn't even activate their berserk skills. Combined with the intense gravitational force, the Hell Legion was limited to taking on a few dozen Great Lords and a Grand Lord at a time. If the Legion tried to take on 3 or 4 Grand Lords at once, they'd be eliminated. They wouldn't even have the chance to flee. With their suppressed movement speed, they were considerably slower than the Earthen giants. Their only option for survival was to slay the monsters. That won't do. Our goal is on the Star Tomb's second floor, Xiaofan said, shaking his head. The Star Tomb had a total of 11 floors, and the first couldn't even be considered the outer region's outer area. They'd barely make it to the dungeon's outer region once they made it to the second floor, and they'd only have a chance of securing a Star of Light by slaying the monsters in that area. It's not that we don't want to reach the second floor, Guild Leader Black Flame, we just can't make it that far. If we start a fight near the tunnel, we'll attract all of the Earthen giants in the area. Not only will we have to face nearly 1,000 Earthen giants, but there are also 5 Grand Lords. We're no match for them with our current combat power, Hell Rush explained. The various superpowers had tried to reach the second floor as well, but even after trying various methods, none had succeeded. The 5 Grand Lords were especially challenging. Even a 1,000-man, Tier 3 team would struggle to defeat them, much less 300 Tier 3 experts. Rest assured, Commander Rush. I can't make any promises regarding the rest of the Earthen giants, but you can leave the Grand Lords to us, Xiaofan said, chuckling as he gave the 8-meter-tall Earthen giants an anticipatory look. You'll deal with them? Hell Rush swept his gaze across Xiaofan and his companions. Their team only included 10 of Zero Wing's members, and although he hadn't seen these players fight yet, he recognized that they all had extraordinary combat power. If these 10 players worked together, they might be able to take on a Grand Lord-ranked Earthen giant by themselves. Unfortunately, 5 Grand Lords guarded the passage ahead. No matter how Hell Rush thought about the idea, it seemed like a joke. That's right. Do you think you and your legion can take out the rest of the monsters? Xiaofan asked, nodding. If you can stop the Grand Lords, the rest won't be a problem, Hell Rush said, flashing a confident grin. But, are you sure that you can defeat the 5 Grand Lords? Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Ew, don't worry about them. Xiaofan then turned to Yan Tianqing and the others and asked, you guys can deal with the Grand Lords, right? No problem. Leave it to us. After watching the Hell Legion, we've been itching for a fight, Yan Tianqing replied with a wide smile. Alright, let's lure the 5 monsters away from the rest of the group first, then, Xiaofan decided. 5 of his companions then walked away before charging at the 5 Grand Lords guarding the tunnel. They're just going to do it? Are they insane? Watching Yan Tianqing and the others rush ahead without waiting for the Hell Legion, Hell Rush was dumbfounded. Chapter 2484, Unlocked Mana Body. Hell Rush wasn't the only one dumbfounded. The rest of Hell Legion's resting members were stunned as they watched the 5 Zero Wing members charge toward the Grand Lords. There were nearly 1,000 Earthen giants near the passage, and the weakest was a level 109 High Lord. There were over 100 Great Lords, as well, and if they surrounded a 100-man, Tier 3 team, the players would be done for. The Earthen giants weren't affected by the Star Tomb's gravitational force, and thus, both their movement and attack speeds were higher than Tier 3 players. As a result, players had to rely on their basic attributes to block the Earthen Giants' attacks and their techniques to minimize the damage. The Hell Legion could only take on 3 or 4 Earthen Giants at one time. Even if they had superior combat standards, they wouldn't be able to face a larger group and emerge from the battle unscathed. Yet, Yan Tianqing and his 4 comrades charged towards so many of these monsters with no hesitation. Just as Hell Rush came to his senses and turned to tell Xiaofan to stop his players, what he saw next left him flabbergasted. Yan Tianqing, Fire Dance, Aqua Rose, Violet Cloud, and Iluofe were simply too fast. Despite the Star Tomb's painful gravitational force, those 5 players closed the distance of several hundred yards in 5 seconds, reaching the monsters guarding the tunnel. Impossible. How are they so fast? Did they find a bug? All of the Hell Legion's members were surprised and confused by Yan Tianqing and his party's movement speed. Even with superior basic attributes, attaining such speed in this environment should be impossible. The increased gravitational force had a massive impact on players' speed. Even if a Tier 2 player had double or triple their basic attributes, the Star Tomb's gravitational force wasn't something that could simply be overcome. The Hell Legion's members even suspected that reaching Tier 4 would only boost their speed to the Tier 2 standard. And yet, Yan Tianqing's group moved as easily as they did outside of the regional dungeon. It was unbelievable. Wait, why is the mana around them so dense? Hell Rush watched Yan Tianqing's group carefully for a moment, and a thought popped in his mind. Could they have already unlocked their mana bodies? Even as he wondered if it were possible, he found the idea laughable. Most of the various superpowers experts hadn't even begun to unlock their mana bodies, much less to their full potential. The Hell Legion member who had progressed the furthest had only unlocked 20% of their mana body. They still had a long road ahead to reach 100%. They'd likely need 1 or 2, perhaps even 4 or 5, months to accomplish the task. One couldn't simply unlock their mana body's full potential overnight. Players would have to continuously try to understand and control their mana bodies, starting the process from the very beginning. Hence, it was a long and arduous process. However, the mana surrounding Yan Tianqing's group was so strong that it puzzled Hell Rush. Thus far, Yan Tianqing and the others hadn't participated in any of their battles, so Hell Rush hadn't noticed anything different about the mana around them. He had assumed that they used some special weapon or equipment piece that made the mana around them so dense. Now that these players were on the move, however, the mana around them grew denser, and it wasn't a result of attracting ambient mana. Rather, this mana felt as if it originated from the players. Before Hell Rush could shake the thought, however, Yan Tianqing and his companions reached their targets. Earthen Chieftain, Elemental Creature, Grand Lord, Level 112 HP 330,000/330,000,000 An Earthen Chieftain was already an incredibly tough monster in the outside world. Elemental creatures had high magic resistance, after all, and the Earthen Chieftain's body was composed of solid stone, which gave it a defense that could rival inferior dragons. There was also the fact that the Earthen Chieftain's HPs were so high. A 100-man team with 30 Tier 3 players would struggle to raid an Earthen Chieftain in the outside world at this stage of the game, and every team of that caliber was considered first-rate in God's domain. Ordinary powers didn't even have enough experts to form such a team. The instant Fire Dance reached her Earthen Chieftain, the Grand Lord, which had long since detected the assassin, raised its fist and slammed it down on her. The Earthen Chieftain was 8 meters tall, and its fists were as massive as boulders. Watching its fist descend toward Fire Dance was like watching a small mountain fall on her. There was no way she could dodge the attack, she'd have to block it. Finally, I can test my mana body's strength properly. A hint of excitement flashed in Fire Dance's eyes as the Grand Lord's fist fell. She immediately unsheathed 1,000 transformations, countering the Earthen Chieftain's attack with a normal strike. When she had emerged from the Legacy Gate, she had only been a small step away from unlocking her mana body's full potential, and after using the Legacy Room, she had resolved that issue. She had spent some time experimenting with her mana body, finally unlocking its potential to 100% a day ago. However, she had been busy with the Starlight Fortress's matters and hadn't had time to test out her mana body. Now that she had the perfect opportunity to so, she wouldn't waste it by relying on her more powerful skills. Is she insane? She's only an assassin, yet she's trying to tough it out? The Hell Legion's members thought Fire Dance was overestimating her strength when she hadn't used a skill to dodge the Grand Lord's attack. With her speed, evading the blow shouldn't be hard. She was a Void Realm expert, after all. She should have recognized the Earthen Chieftain's attack trajectory immediately. And yet, the assassin was trying to counter the Earthen Chieftain's blow. She had to be suicidal. Boom! The sound of an explosion echoed throughout the area, and the ground trembled. The impact's shockwave threw dust into the air. Once the dust settled, the scene before the Hell Legion's members stunned them. She blocked it. An assassin, a class known for its speed, had successfully blocked the Earthen Chieftain's attack. Crap. She actually blocked it? Is she really an assassin? The Hell Legion members felt their worldview crumble when Fire Dance had emerged from the exchange without injury. Not even Thunder Beast, who had the highest strength of any Hell Legion member, would be a match for a monster like the Earthen Chieftain. He'd have to rely on the Legion's healers to tank the Grand Lord. And yet, Fire Dance had countered the attack without taking any damage. Sure enough, an unlocked peak gold mana body is amazing. Even a normal attack is so powerful. If she can learn a mana technique, she'll likely be able to solo mythics. When Xiaofan saw Fire Dance dominate the Earthen Chieftain, he couldn't help his desire to unlock his own mana body. God's Domain's players would only be considered true experts once they had unlocked their mana body's full potential. If they didn't, they'd only be considered pseudo-experts, even after reaching Tier 4. Take the Star Tomb, for example. If players entered the dungeon without fully unlocking their mana bodies, they'd struggle against the regional dungeon suppression. Hence, the first thing all experts needed to do upon reaching Tier 3 was unlock their mana bodies. Levels and tiers had to be set aside. Until they succeeded, they wouldn't even qualify to explore God's domain. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. While Xiaofan admired Fire Dance's display, the assassin used shadow steps to appear behind the Earthen Chieftain. It's my turn. Fire Dance raised 1,000 transformations, aiming for the back of the Grand Lord's head. Absolute strike. Darkness immediately surrounded Fire Dance. -424,538. A damage of over -400,000 appeared above the Earthen Chieftain's head, and silence fell over the Hell Legion. Chapter 2485, Inhuman Battle, over 400,000 damage? Is she even human? Every member of the Hell Legion wondered if they were hallucinating when they saw the bright red numbers above the Earthen Chieftain's head. For a moment, they even wondered if Fire Dance was an NPC disguised as a player. Even they, experts who stood at the pinnacle of God's domain, could barely cause over -70,000 damage to the Earthen Giants with Tier 3 skills and spells. Hell Rush, one of the Legion's strongest players, could only deal around -150,000. These monsters' ridiculously high defense and magic resistance could practically rival archaic species of the same rank. And yet, they had just watched a Tier 3 assassin deal over -400,000 damage to the Grand Lord ranked Earthen Chieftain, and she had only used a Tier 2 skill. Even at Tier 3, assassins didn't have many options for raising their attack's power. Most of their skills focused on speed, increasing their total DPS. But Fire Dance had obliterated what they had known about the class. How could she even be considered an assassin with that kind of raw power? She was even more of a berserker than actual berserkers. Before the Hell Legion members could recover from their shock, Yan Tianqing and the other 3 Zero-Wing experts started their battles with their own Earthen Chieftains. Yan Tianqing effortlessly evaded his Grand Lord's straightforward attack, circling to the Grand Lord's back. He then brandished his daggers and sent several beautiful, silver arcs slicing into the Earthen Chieftain's back. -134,324. -274,543. -133,645. A series of damages appeared above the Earthen Chieftain's head, and although each of his hits didn't deal as much damage as Fire Dance's, the total amount was frightening. Meanwhile, Aqua Rose, Violet Cloud, and Yi Luofei, all magical class players, caused an even greater commotion. As soon as Aqua Rose finished her spell's incantation, a towering tidal wave manifested before her, devouring the Earthen Chieftain and several dozen Earthen Giants nearby. In one move, Aqua Rose heavily injured the Earthen Giants and Earthen Chieftain, which boasted high magic resistance. She also dealt over 1,000,000 damage to each of them. Meanwhile, Yi Luofei summoned 5 flaming meteors, casting them down on her Earthen Chieftain. 1, 2, 3 meteors. As each meteor struck the ground, the dungeon's first floor trembled violently. By the time all 5 had landed, they had created a crater that was over 100 meters wide and 10 meters deep around the Grand Lord. Of the 3 Earthen Chieftains that faced these magical class players, however, Violet Cloud's target was in the worst state. 300 shadow blades danced around the Grand Lord, each with enough force to make the monster stumble. When all 300 attacked as one, the outcome could only be described as a tragedy. How does Zero-Wing have so many monstrous players? At this point, every member of the Hell Legion believed that Yan Tianqing's party could slay the 5 Earthen Chieftains, let alone keep them distracted. They only might need some time to defeat the monsters. Even so, their combat power was astonishing. The 5 Zero-Wing experts single-handedly suppressed the Star Tomb's Grand Lords, and not one of them was an MT Guild leader. Black Flame, have they fully unlocked their mana bodies? Hell Rush could not help but ask as he watched Fire Dance and the others fight. He couldn't think of any other reason that would allow those 5 players to display such incredible speed and power. Not even the various Super Guilds experts had unlocked their mana bodies' full potential. All of them were still exploring. It hadn't been long since these experts had reached Tier 3, after all. They have. All 5 have reached 100% of their mana body's potential, Xiaofan confirmed with a nod. He had no intention of hiding the fact, nor could he. He couldn't explain away the strength Yan Tianqing and the other 4 displayed as higher basic attributes. Even if they had double or triple their basic attributes, they wouldn't exhibit such impressive combat power. Players could only accomplish this feat by unlocking their mana body's full potential. It was a pity that Shadow Sword, Cola, Turtledove, and Alluring Summer hadn't progressed this far yet. Even Alluring Summer had only unlocked 98% of her potential. If she had been able to bridge that final gap, their team would have had a much easier time exploring the Star Tomb. All 5 of them have fully unlocked their mana bodies. Hell Rush and the vice commanders around him gasped and they heard Shifeng's answer. They had suspected this might be the case, but they couldn't help their astonishment when Shifeng had confirmed it. Even the strongest player in Netherworld Empire had only unlocked 20% of their mana body's potential. They'd still need another month or 2 to reach 100%. They would still need at least 1 or 2 months to reach 100% potential. Yet, Zero-Wing, a guild that had started from nothing in God's domain and wasn't supported by any major corporation, had nurtured 5 experts with fully unlocked mana bodies. It was unbelievable. Would you be willing to offer some guidance regarding mana bodies, Guild Leader Black Flame? If you are, I can represent my guild in offering to garrison 50,000 experts in the Starlight Fortress long term. Netherworld Empire will also supply Zero-Wing with various rare materials from the Western continent, Hell Rush proposed, trying to contain his excitement. Everyone's mana body was different, and players would gain very little from others' experiences, but the fact that Zero Wing had nurtured 5 experts with fully unlocked mana bodies proved that it could help players accomplish the feat. Anyone that said otherwise was either lying or a fool. Players would see huge differences in their accomplishments, depending on how soon they unlocked their mana body's potential. The difference between the combat power Zero Wing's members displayed and that of the Hell Legion made that much obvious. After Hell Rush presented his offer and request, the rest of his comrades grew restless, watching Xiaofan. They all wanted to hear his answer. Before this, they hadn't realized how effective a fully unlocked mana body would be on one's combat power, but after seeing Yan Tianqing and his companions' performance, they were sure of one thing. Tier 3 players that hadn't unlocked their mana bodies were pests in comparison. Many of the Hell Legion's members had just as high combat standards as Fire Dance and the others, but if they had to fight any of those 5 players, they'd refuse. The difference between their overall combat power was like the difference between heaven and earth. They even suspected that Fire Dance and her party could take on 30 Hell Legion members simultaneously. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. The more Hell Legion's experts thought about it, the more restless they became. Rather than their earlier prideful attitude, they all watched Xiaofan with anticipation and hunger. Weapons and equipment were secondary concerns for experts like them. Their individual strength was far more important. In fact, they had joined their guild in the pursuit of greater strength. Don't worry about the 50,000 experts, Xiaofan dismissed the offer. He could not help but shake his head and chuckle when he saw everyone's eager looks. Offering guidance for unlocking your mana bodies isn't necessarily impossible, but in exchange, I'd like Netherworld Empire to help me with another matter. In exchange, I will offer some advice. Although I cannot help all of you unlock your mana body's full potential in a short time, I can help you complete the task with a little more speed. Hell Rush had to calm his heart again when Xiaofan had agreed. He responded immediately, Guild Leader Black Flame, please, state your demands. If I have the authority to agree to them, I can do so on my guild's behalf. It's very simple. I need 1 month. I want Hell Legion under my command for 1 full month. Xiaofan raised a finger and swept his gaze across the Hell Legion members. Chapter 2486, Earthen Chieftains loot. When Xiaofan finished speaking, Hell Rush and the others revealed astonished expressions on their faces. You want to employ us for a month? Hell Rush could not help hesitating upon hearing Xiaofan's demand. Had the swordsman asked for financial assistance, he could have easily approved the request with his authority. However, hiring the entire Hell Legion for 1 whole month was a different story. The Hell Legion was one of Netherworld Empire's trump card legions. The Legion's first priority was the improvement of its members' strength and level, which was why the guild would invest tons of resources in the Legion. It might be fine if Xiaofan wished to employ the Hell Legion for 1 or 2 days, but an employment period of 1 whole month was something else altogether. A month might not be particularly long, but it wasn't particularly short, either. Netherworld Empire might be willing to use money and resources to exchange for the improvement of its members' combat power, but not a large amount of its trump card legion's time. After all, the reason behind Netherworld's considerable investment of resources in the development of its members was to buy time for itself. To be precise, it was to save time and gain an advantage over their competitors. Selling the time of one of its trump card legions would be akin to putting the cart before the horse. Moreover, the Hell Legion had plenty of tasks it needed to handle. If it operated under Xiaofan for a month, these tasks would have to be set aside. You can rest assured that during this 1 month, your level won't fall behind others in the slightest. In fact, your equipment standard won't fall behind either. You'll also be free to do whatever you want for most of this 1 month. I will only need your help during certain times, Xiaofan said, chuckling when he saw the hesitation on Hell Rush's face. Most importantly, you will get to receive guidance on how to unlock your mana bodies ahead of everyone else. I can guarantee that all of you will unlock your mana bodies within this 1 month. Xiaofan understood Hell Rush's concerns. After all, the Hell Legion was Netherworld Empire's strongest trump card legion. Although the Great Super Guild invested the best resources it had in the Legion, that did not mean the Legion would automatically grow stronger. The Legion still had to cherish every second available to improve itself so that it could compete and surpass the teams and legions of other superpowers. No guild would be willing to let its strongest legion waste 1 whole month working for someone else, even in exchange for the method to accelerate the process of unlocking one's mana body. I'm afraid I don't have the authority to decide on this matter. I need to report this to my superiors first and leave the decision to them, Hell Rush said. Although Xiaofan's words were tempting, he still shook his head and did not give a definitive answer. The Hell Legion was Netherworld Empire's trump card legion. The resources Netherworld Empire could obtain and invest in the Hell Legion were not something Xiaofan could possibly get his hands on. Moreover, Netherworld Empire might not have any methods to accelerate the unlocking process of a player's mana body now, but that might not be the case a few days later. If the Great Super Guild happened to come across such a method soon after signing a contract with Xiaofan, the Hell Legion would waste 1 month of its time for nothing. With the Hell Legion's capabilities, the opportunities it stood to lose out on from 1 month's idleness were massive. Alright. I'm not in a hurry to settle this deal. You can think it over once you return, Xiaofan said, not the slightest bit surprised by Hell Rush's reply. After all, this was no longer a decision Hell Rush could make as the Hell Legion's commander, only Netherworld Empire's guild leader and Grand Elders could. Thank you for your understanding, Guild Leader Black Flame. We will give you a reply as soon as possible, Hell Rush said, nodding. Inwardly, though, he felt that the likelihood of his higher-ups approving this transaction was minimal. After all, a month was simply too long, especially with the number of Tier 3 players in God's domain rapidly increasing. Meanwhile, Kola, who had overheard the conversation, looked at Xiaofan in confusion. Guild Leader, are you really planning to let them enter the Legacy Gate? Kola asked in a quiet tone, a pained expression appearing on his face. Kola had personally experienced the Legacy Gate's benefits. It was undoubtedly the best place to improve one's mana body. However, the number of slots to enter the Legacy Gate each month were limited. Zero Wing barely had enough for itself. He felt that giving the slots to Netherworld Empire would be a huge waste. After all, a Tier 3 expert with a fully unlocked mana body brought plenty of advantages. Moreover, letting the Hell Legion use the Legacy Gate would expose the Starlight Fortress's true value. Although the Hell Legion indeed possessed a lot of Tier 3 experts, Zero Wing wasn't weak either. Zero Wing might not be capable of producing 300 Tier 3 experts in the next 10 or 15 days, but producing up to 200 Tier 3 experts should be no problem. By then, Zero Wing should also have a few more experts that had fully unlocked their mana bodies. I have an important use for the Hell Legion's experts, Xiaofan said, nodding. An important use? Xiaofang's words confused Kola. He simply couldn't understand what Xiaofan would need the Hell Legion for. In terms of combat power, the Hell Legion's experts were far inferior to Fire Dance's group of 5, in fact, the 5 could beat up the entire Hell Legion handily. At best, the Hell Legion would be useful for raiding dungeons. Fire Dance and the others are indeed very strong after unlocking their mana bodies, but there are many things that cannot be solved with just a handful of players, Xiaofan said, chuckling at the look of disdain Kola was giving the Hell Legion. Fire Dance's group of 5 might be capable of suppressing the Hell Legion now, but once the Hell Legion's members fully unlocked their mana bodies as well, Fire Dance's 5 wouldn't even be able to flee for their lives. Moreover, the Hell Legion's Tier 3 experts fully unlocking their mana bodies was only a matter of time. Meanwhile, what Xiaofan needed was the Hell Legion with its members' mana bodies fully unlocked. Although the Silver Divine Dragon was already his companion, that was only temporary. He still had to complete Auerbach's trial within 4 months to make the contract permanent. Auerbach's trial was no trivial matter. He needed to raise his strength as quickly as possible in order to clear it. Meanwhile, of the methods he could think of to boost his strength, the best one was to complete Solomon's sword. However, the locations of the remaining fragments of Solomon's sword were simply too dangerous. The risk of failure was incredibly high if he went to these locations by himself, and even if Fire Dance and the others accompanied him. Hence, he needed the help of the Hell Legion. Moreover, after obtaining the Hell Legion's help, Zero Wing would no longer have to fear the various superpowers on the eastern continent. It could clash with them head-on and contest for the truly important resource points. Zero Wing would not have to rely on just a handful of guild towns and cities to secure resources, which would, in turn, prevent the superpowers from easily suppressing its resource income. Currently, the main source of weapons and equipment was still monsters. However, this would shift to lifestyle players as players reached ever higher levels. If Zero Wing did not secure the necessary resource points early on, with the guild's current scale of development, the various superpowers would eventually rip it to shreds. By the time Xiaofan and Cola's conversation was over, Fire Dance and the others had lured the 5 Earthen Chieftains away from the main group of monsters. Upon seeing this, Hell Rush immediately led his team into action and started clearing out the weaker Earthen Giants. As the Earthen Chieftains were gone, the strongest monsters before the tunnel were merely level 112 Great Lords. For the Hell Legion members, whose basic attributes rivaled those of Great Lords and even Grand Lords of the same level, these monsters were a piece of cake. The only inconvenience was their reduced mobility, which slowed their clearing speed by a significant margin. However, with Fire Dance and the others occupying the Earthen Chieftains, the Hell Legion did not face much pressure during battle. The Legion systematically defeated the Earthen Giants, chipping away at their numbers. Roughly 2 hours later, all of the Earthen Giants blocking the tunnel had fallen. Only the 5 Earthen Chieftains remained standing. At this moment, however, each of the Earthen Giants had less than 70% of their HPs remaining. The Hell Legion members could not help but gulp audibly at the sight. Although they knew that Fire Dance and the others could solo the Earthen Giants, they still could not believe their eyes when they saw that each of the Earthen Giants had lost so much HP already. "Alright, quickly get rid of these Earthen Giants," Xiaofan commanded when he noticed the Hell Legion members staring dazedly at Fire Dance's group. Others might not be aware of the condition of Fire Dance's group, but Xiaofan was. Fire Dance and the others might have burned a considerable portion of the Earthen Chieftain's HP already, but they had also expended a significant amount of stamina. With their remaining stamina, finishing off the Earthen Giants all by themselves would be impossible. Ultimately, a group was still necessary to defeat monsters like the Earthen Giants. Otherwise, he wouldn't have bothered hiring the Hell Legion at all. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU Xiaofang's command promptly snapped everyone from the Hell Legion out of their daze, and they sprang to assist Fire Dance's group with the 5 Earthen Chieftains. Fire Dance's group of 5 tanked the 5 Earthen Chieftains while the Hell Legion members helped deal damage from the sidelines. With the participation of the Hell Legion, the Earthen Giants lost HP rapidly. In the end, all 5 Earthen Giants fell within 30 minutes. The Hell Legion members had a much easier time with the Grand Lord ranked Earthen Chieftains than with the Great Lord ranked Earthen Giants. When all 5 Earthen Giants collapsed simultaneously, the players' experience bars started filling up rapidly. The amount of EXP the Earthen Giants awarded was much more bountiful than that of Grand Lords of the same level in the outside world. In just 3 seconds, their experience bars had increased by 15%. Far more EXP than they normally would gain after grinding for half a day. Moreover, after the 5 Earthen Chieftains died, they had dropped several dozen items. The abundance of their loot surpassed even that of mythic monsters in the outside world. For a moment, everyone from the Hell Legion was stupefied by this scene. Chapter 2487, Flaming Steel Set. The Earthen Chieftains' loot is actually so abundant? The number of items they dropped is at least triple that of the Grand Lords in the outside world. The Hell Legion members' eyes glowed when they saw the 5 Earthen Chieftains' loot. There were plenty of level 100+ Grand Lords in the outside world, including Star Valley. Killing just one would net players a significant profit. If players were lucky, they might even obtain a piece of dark gold equipment. At this stage of the game, level 105 dark gold equipment was considered one of the best equipment available even to the various superpowers experts. As for level 100+ epic weapons and equipment, they were things that could be obtained only by killing level 100+ mythics, an incredibly difficult feat. Moreover, the drop rate wasn't 100% either. Usually, all level 100+ epic items a guild obtained would be allocated to the guild's elders. Even the guild's peak experts would not get any. Hence, for most experts right now, level 105 dark gold equipment was the best equipment available. Now, the 5 Earthen Chieftains had dropped loot equivalent to that of 15 Grand Lords in the outside world. This was simply a jackpot. Moreover, the Earthen Chieftains also granted much more EXP, equivalent to that of a mythic monster in the outside world. While the Hell Legion members were quietly discussing this matter among themselves, Aqua Rose and the others quickly collected the Earthen Chieftains' loot. Guild leader, we're quite lucky this time. These 5 Earthen Chieftains dropped a total of 7 pieces of level 110 fine gold equipment and 12 pieces of level 110 secret silver equipment. Among the secret silver equipment is a pair of plate armor gloves that belongs to an 8-piece, level 110 secret silver set equipment, Aqua Rose joyfully reported to Xiaofan after organizing the loot. In regard to this situation, Xiaofan wasn't surprised in the slightest. Although they were currently on the Star Tomb's first floor, this place was still a God Mode regional dungeon. Such loot was very normal. Moreover, nobody had defeated these Earthen Chieftains before. The fact that these Grand Lords dropped level 110 fine gold equipment and level 110 secret silver set equipment was nothing special at all. Level 110 fine gold equipment and level 110 secret silver set equipment? Hell Rush was astonished when he overheard Aqua Rose's report, because the weapons and equipment the Earthen Chieftains dropped were slightly better than even some of the items he had equipped. His equipment already ranked among the best available in the entire Netherworld Empire, only a select few in the guild had better. Moreover, if not for the several pieces of level 100+ epic items on him, then his equipment might have gotten surpassed altogether. Here, take a look, Aqua Rose said, smiling as she shared the attribute panels of the equipment they obtained with Hell Rush, not bothering to hide the item's attributes. After all, everyone from Zero Wing had much better equipment. Isn't this flaming steel set a little too powerful? If one of our MTs were to equip it, they could most likely tank an Earthen Chieftain all by themselves. Hell Rush exclaimed, a passionate flame burning in his eyes as he stared at a pair of plate armor gloves. Although the current Hell Legion's MTs were already well equipped, with some even possessing 2 pieces of level 100+ epic equipment, the overall standard of their equipment would still be inferior by a large margin when compared to the flaming steel set. Just the bonuses from the set's 5-piece and 8-piece set effects alone could already rival those from being fully geared in level 110 fine gold equipment. The 5-piece set effect increased not only the user's defense skill by 3 levels but also the user's defense attribute by 25%, while the 8-piece set effect increased the user's HP and physique by 25%. These bonuses allowed MTs to become sturdier with much greater mobility. An MT geared in the flaming steel set would have no problems tanking level 110 mythic monsters in the outside world. Upon thinking up to this point, Hell Rush had the urge to have the Hell Legion continue grinding in the Star Tomb even after working for Xiaofan. After all, if the Hell Legion secured a complete flaming steel set, it would have a much easier time raiding level 100 super large-scale team dungeons. However, Hell Rush soon shook his head and smiled bitterly. Although the temptation was strong, nobody in the Hell Legion was capable of tanking the Earthen Chieftains right now. If not for Aqua Rose and the others keeping the Grand Lords in check, the Hell Legion would have been helpless against the monsters. If Commander Rush likes this flaming steel set, once we collect a full set, I don't mind selling it to you, Xiaofan said, smiling when he saw Hell Rush fall silent after seeing the flaming steel set's attributes. Guild Leader Black Flame, are you serious? Hell Rush reflexively sought confirmation. The flaming steel set was top-tier set equipment for MTs, which definitely could not be bought in the outside world. In fact, even the various super guilds did not possess such excellent set equipment right now. Moreover, one could use the flaming steel set up to level 115. Actually, although the set could grow only up to level 115, with how excellent its attributes were, players should still be able to use it even after reaching level 120. Only epic equipment could surpass the flaming steel set. Of course. I never joke. In fact, if the Hell Legion accepts my condition, let alone one flaming steel set, even obtaining 20 or 30 sets of set equipment on par with the flaming steel set wouldn't be a problem, Xiaofan said, nodding. The flaming steel set was indeed excellent for current Tier 3 players. However, as more players fully unlocked their mana bodies, such set equipment would become very common. Not to mention, after a certain point, experts should only be geared in dark gold equipment or set equipment at the very minimum because past level 100, only dark gold equipment or better could adapt to players' mana bodies. If players with fully unlocked mana bodies fought using equipment at the fine gold rank or below, they would rapidly deplete the durability of their equipment. In fact, after reaching Tier 4, players couldn't even consider using secret, silver weapons and equipment since such low-caliber weapons and equipment couldn't endure the power of a Tier 4 mana body, becoming useless after the execution of one skill or spell. This was the eternal pain that all expert players that had fully unlocked their mana bodies faced. Only very few players in God's domain had fully unlocked their mana bodies, so players were still unaware that having an overly powerful body was also a problem. 30 sets? Hell Rush could not help being tempted. Previously, he had felt that the 1-month employment period Xiaofan proposed was too long. However, he started wavering after hearing that the Hell Legion could get its hands on 30 sets of set equipment that was on par with the flaming steel set equipment. After all, even if the Hell Legion desperately grinded for 1 month, few of its members could reach level 120 in that period. Meanwhile, the flaming steel set equipment was top-tier set equipment that could still be used even after players reached level 120. In other words, even after working for Xiaofan for a month, the Hell Legion would retain an edge over the teams of other superpowers when it came to equipment standards. Now, he felt that he needed to have a proper discussion with his superiors in the guild. Since we've taken care of the monsters already, we should head to the second floor. If we continue resting here, the monsters might respawn, Xiaofan said after seeing that everyone was sufficiently rested. Everyone promptly stood up from the ground and entered the tunnel leading to the Star Tomb's second floor. The tunnel was long and narrow. Not only did it not have any monsters, but the ambient mana inside was also incredibly dense. This situation allowed everyone to relax their mental states considerably. Meanwhile, after walking for around 5 minutes, the team arrived on the Star Tomb's second floor, where a strong pressure greeted everyone. Why is the gravity here so much higher than on the first floor? Aqua Rose immediately felt uncomfortable when she stepped onto the second floor. On the first floor, she had barely felt the effects of the increased gravitational force. Now, however, she could actually feel her body growing significantly heavier. Even her mobility was negatively affected. The gravity here is twice as strong as that of the first floor. It seems this floor will be our limit. When Xiaofan sensed the gravitational force on the second floor, he, too, felt a little surprised. He never thought that the gravity here would be so powerful. From what he knew, the gravitational force players experienced inside the star tomb would grow ever higher with each floor they climbed. Hence, ascending the star tomb was incredibly difficult. After reaching the 4th floor, even Tier 3 players that had their mana bodies fully unlocked would be incapable of combat without anti-gravity equipment. However, anti-gravity equipment had always been considered incredibly rare in God's domain. In fact, lifestyle players couldn't produce it, as its creation involved ancient technology. Following which, Xiaofan and the others started clearing out the monsters outside the tunnel's exit. Although the gravitational force on the 2nd floor had doubled, the monsters' strength and levels had barely increased. The only obvious difference was the larger number of Great Lord-ranked Earthen giants in each group of monsters. However, this change did not affect Xiaofan and the others at all. Moreover, to everyone's surprise, the monsters here granted at least 3 times more EXP than the monsters found on the 1st floor. As a result, everyone's leveling speed was now at least 50% faster than if they grinded in the outside world. In addition, the loot the monsters dropped was also much better. Even the Great Lord-ranked Earthen giants occasionally dropped level 110 fine gold equipment. Aside from having better loot, the Star Tomb's 2nd floor had much thinner mana than the 1st floor. Hence, everyone could actually improve their control over the mana inside their mana bodies as they fought, which inspired everyone to fight much more fervently. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU. In such a way, the team grinded on the 2nd floor for 2 whole days, moving from the outer area to the inner area. Many players on the team leveled up from the abundant EXP. Unfortunately for Xiaofan, as he had reached level 111 already, the amount of EXP he received from the 2nd floor's monsters wasn't particularly abundant. Hence, he did not manage to level up. As if to rub salt in the wound, despite killing numerous Grand Lords, he still didn't obtain a Star of Light during the past 2 days of grinding, contrary to his expectations. Guild leader, I discovered an inferior legendary treasure chest over here. Fire Dance, who was scouting ahead of the team, reported excitedly through the team chat. An inferior legendary treasure chest? Xiaofan was stunned when he heard Fire Dance's words. How is this possible? According to his memories, the Star Tomb shouldn't possess a single treasure chest, much less an inferior legendary treasure chest. Chapter 2488, Demon God's Temptation. Could it be a pioneering benefit? After giving the matter some thought, this was the only possibility Xiaofan could think of. In his previous life, there was never any news of anybody discovering a treasure chest in the Star Tomb despite the many teams grinding there back then. Any treasure chest opened in the Star Tomb would definitely have caught the attention of others. However, nobody had ever seen any signs of a treasure chest being opened in the Star Tomb. Hence, everyone had always believed that this regional dungeon did not spawn treasure chests and that players could only obtain resources and treasures from killing bosses there. However, Xiaofan did not put too much thought into the matter. After all, that was an inferior legendary treasure chest they were talking about, an opportunity that was incredibly difficult to come by. He immediately led Kola and the others toward Fire Dance's location. At the same time, Fire Dance's report in the team chat had set the team abuzz. Crap! There's actually an inferior legendary treasure chest here. Zero Wing has struck gold this time. It might even get a fragmented legendary item. Only our guild leader has a fragmented legendary item currently. Zero Wing is truly lucky. The several vice commanders of the Hell Legion grew incredibly envious upon hearing about the discovery of an inferior legendary treasure chest. If not for Zero Wing being their ally, they would have most likely done everything they could to contest for it. Currently, in the opinion of most experts, epic weapons and equipment were the highest-ranked items available in God's domain, while fragmented legendary items and the like were mere rumors. After all, items of such caliber had yet to appear on the market. In fact, the majority of the various superpowers still didn't have any concrete information relating to fragmented legendary items. According to Netherworld Empire's investigations, there shouldn't be more than 10 fragmented legendary items in the hands of players right now. Moreover, only a few in the guild's upper echelon knew about this information. As for the strength of fragmented legendary items, the guild upper echelon, like themselves, had personally witnessed it before. It was not something epic weapons and equipment could hope to match. Fragmented legendary items allowed players to undergo a qualitative transformation. If they could obtain just one fragmented legendary item, they would instantly soar to the apex of God's domain. Most importantly, fragmented legendary items could be used forever, continuously growing stronger as players reached higher levels, and would never fall behind the times. Hence, Netherworld Empire had always been frantically searching for clues to fragmented legendary items and would go all out in following any clues it found. In fact, the guild wouldn't even mind letting the entire Hell Legion suffer annihilation if it meant obtaining a fragmented legendary item. However, according to Netherworld Empire's research, the chances of getting a fragmented legendary item from epic treasure chests were minimal. Only inferior legendary treasure chests had a significant chance of awarding such an item. The Star Tomb's pioneering benefits are this excellent? Hell Rush also could not help growing envious in this situation. It seems we'll really need to go all out in exploring the Star Tomb after this job. Although he knew that the Star Tomb definitely contained bountiful resources and treasures as a God Mode regional dungeon, he never imagined that it would be to such an extent. They were only on the Star Tomb's second floor, yet they had already come across an inferior legendary treasure chest. If even the second floor had such amazing treasures, he simply could not fathom how amazing the treasures on the higher floors would be. After the Hell Legion's members discussed this matter briefly among themselves, they quickly followed Xiaofan toward Fire Dance's location. The environment of the Star Tomb's second floor was a tropical rainforest. However, unlike the rainforests in the real world, the rainforest here was home to colossal trees. Entering this place felt like entering a land for giants. Ordinary humans would look incredibly small here. After traveling through the forest for around 20 minutes, the team arrived before a barren hill, which actually had an ancient temple erected on it. A dark fog enveloped this shrine, evoking an indescribably gloomy sensation. Through the open gates, one could see a gigantic treasure chest sitting in the middle of the shrine. This treasure chest gave off the distinctive orange-red glow of an inferior legendary treasure chest. Guild leader, we've struck the jackpot this time. It really is an inferior legendary treasure chest. Kola said, excitement surfacing on his face when he spotted the gigantic treasure chest. This was no longer Kola's first time seeing an inferior legendary treasure chest. Although he didn't think that Fire Dance would make a mistake, after verifying Fire Dance's claim with his own eyes, he still could not help his surprise. After all, he had personally experienced the strength of a fragmented legendary item before. At this moment, aside from Kola, Aqua Rose and the other Zero Wing members present also revealed excited expressions on their faces. After all, so long as they managed to obtain a fragmented legendary item from the treasure chest, Zero Wing would have another Apex expert, something the guild lacked the most right now. However, unlike the Zero Wing experts, the members of the Hell Legion did not reveal any joy or envy upon seeing the inferior legendary treasure chest. On the contrary, they even started shaking their heads in disappointment. What a pity. It's actually a demon god's temptation, Hell Rush sighed as he gazed at the gloomy temple. After calming herself, Aqua Rose turned to Hell Rush and asked curiously, Demon God's temptation? What do you mean, Commander Rush? Previously, she had clearly sensed Hell Rush and the others' passionate response to the discovery of the inferior legendary treasure chest. Now, however, after seeing the treasure chest itself, they were suddenly indifferent toward it. This was truly strange. You arrived on the Western continent not long ago, so you might not know about this, but strange temples randomly appear in some of the dangerous locations on the western continent. Not only are these strange temples filled with dense dark energy, but these temples also house incredibly precious treasures, Hell Rush explained. However, these temples are merely traps set up by demon gods. If players fail to resist the temptation and get lured into these temples, they are forced to undergo a trial and challenge the phantom of the demon god that set up the trial. Meanwhile, these trials are simply impossible to complete. To make matters worse, if players don't complete the trial, they not only fail to obtain the treasure but even have their level returned to 0 and half their soul devoured, which would place them in a weakened state for a very long period. At which point, players have no choice but to remake their accounts. Hence, we have labeled these temples as the demon god's temptation. As Hell Rush finished speaking, many of the Hell Legion's members revealed grim expressions. This was because several of the Hell Legion's members had fallen for these traps and were forced to remake their accounts, an irrecoverable blow. Moreover, Netherworld Empire wasn't the only guild that had fallen for these demon gods' temptations, many other superpowers had too. Many famous experts had disappeared from God's domain, victims of these traps. Hence, whenever the demon god's temptation was mentioned, the various superpowers experts would turn pale with fright. So, that means we came here for nothing? Aqua Rose grew dejected upon hearing Hell Rush's words. Although she still had the urge to challenge the demon god's temptation even after hearing Hell Rush's explanation, reason stopped her. Her current combat power might be far superior to Hell Rush's and the others, but some trials in God's domain did not just test players' combat power but also their combat standards. Players would need to meet the requirements for both to pass those trials. Meanwhile, when it came to combat standards, Hell Rush was leaps and bounds above her, and considerably superior even to Yen Tianxing, who was a domain realm expert. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. If even an expert of Hell Rush's caliber had given up on the demon god's temptation without hesitation, how could someone like herself possibly succeed? Don't even think about it. The greater the treasure stored inside a demon god's temptation, the more difficult the trial would be. Previously, a trial that housed an epic treasure chest already forced players to go up against a demon god's phantom of the same level and tier. With the reward being an inferior legendary treasure chest right now, I'm afraid the phantom summoned will be at least one tier higher than the challenger, Hell Rush advised. He, too, was tempted by the prospects of obtaining an inferior legendary treasure chest. If there were even the slightest possibility of success, he would most likely give the trial a try. However, that was not the case for the trial before him. Challenging it would be akin to making a bet guaranteed to lose. After all, the opponent summoned would be a Tier 4 phantom of a god. The other members of the Hell Legion also agreed with Hell Rush's words. With their current strength, they could only admire the inferior legendary treasure chest from afar. They had to be tired of living to try to obtain it. No, we're not completely without options, Xiaofan suddenly said. Chapter 2489, Circumventing the Rules. Hell Rush and the Hell Legion's other members gave Xiaofan a strange look after he spoke up. They had already explained the demon god's temptation to the Eastern players. They hadn't expected that Xiaofan would still aim to claim the inferior legendary treasure chest. Trying to take that chest would be the equivalent of trading one's life for wealth. Guild leader Black Flame, you won't be able to use your berserk skills or any magic tools once inside the temple. You'd have to face the demon god's phantom by relying on your own power. Although the phantom isn't a true demon god, a demon god did create it. It's far stronger than a hero of the same level and tier, Hell Rush explained. If you fail, you'll have to remake your account. Hell Rush could sympathize with Xiaofang's desire. An inferior legendary treasure chest was just that tempting. That treasure chest had a very high chance of bestowing a fragmented legendary item to whoever opened it. But, Xiaofan didn't know how powerful a demon god's phantom was. Hell Rush might have considered the task of obtaining the chest, too, if he hadn't seen a demon god's phantom for himself, but he had. The Hell Legion's members nodded in agreement with their commander. They acknowledged Xiaofan for his strength, but the man wasn't powerful enough to challenge a demon god's phantom and survive. Guild leader? Xiaofang's statement even made Aqua Rose a little nervous. He hadn't even unlocked his mana body's full potential, and in the Star Tomb, he had slightly less combat power than she did. If Xiaofan failed the trial, he'd take Zero Wing down with him. The man was the symbol of Zero Wing, and if he were forced to remake his account, the guild would quickly crumble. You misunderstand. I have no intention of challenging the demon god's phantom directly, Xiaofan explained, noticing his comrade's anxious expressions. I'm just saying that obtaining that treasure chest is possible. Obtaining the treasure chest without challenging the demon god's phantom? Hell Rush gave Xiaofan a confused look. He thought the man must be joking. Once players entered the temple, they couldn't leave until the trial until they completed it. If Xiaofan didn't defeat the demon god's phantom, how would he claim the treasure chest? Yes, though it will be somewhat difficult, Xiaofan answered, nodding. He then turned to Aqua Rose and said, set up a starlight gathering magic array around the temple. Then, I want you to stand guard and prevent any monsters from approaching. Xiaofan knew far more about the ancient gods and their phantoms than anyone in God's domain. Not even a dragon of the same tier would approach an area guarded by an ancient god's phantom. The phantom's strength was on par with that of a divine dragon. As he was now, he wouldn't last 3 or 4 hits against a demon god's phantom of the same tier, much less against a phantom that was 1 tier higher. While he might not be able to defeat a demon god's phantom, however, obtaining that treasure chest was a different story. Many confident experts had challenged demon god's temptations during his previous life, but they had all been forced to set up new accounts. Not even Apex experts had succeeded. However, one independent player had secured the treasure within a demon god's temptation at some point, and that independent expert had posted about his victory on the forums. The incident had shaken God's domain to its core, inspiring curiosity in every player. The various superpowers had even tried to recruit this independent player, offering an elder position, even a grand elder position, within their guilds. When the superpowers had finally located the player, however, what they had found had left them dumbfounded. That independent player had only been an ordinary expert. He hadn't even reached the refinement realm at that point. No one had expected the outcome. So many experts, including domain realm experts wielding fragmented legendary items, had tried to clear demon god's temptations, yet none had lasted more than 10 seconds against the demon god's phantom. Naturally, they hadn't secured the treasure either. After detailed interviews, the various superpowers had learned that the independent player hadn't actually challenged the demon god's temptation. Rather, he had found the treasure hidden within the temple. To claim the treasure for himself, he had merely decoded the magic arrays that had protected the temple. Once a player decoded the magic arrays, they could use magic tools within the temple. This made it possible to pin down the demon god's temple long enough to flee with the treasure. Astounded, none of the various superpowers had considered that there was a way to bypass the system's rules. Every player in God's domain had long since memorized the main God system's various rules and determined that players simply couldn't challenge these rules. However, the main God system had never indicated that challenging existing rules was impossible. Players had simply convinced themselves that the concept was fact. Of course, the method the independent player had employed wasn't easy. Decoding the temple's magic arrays required a lot of time, and demon god's temptations didn't exist for long, with most only lasting 2 days. Although the independent player hadn't been an amazing expert, he had been an advanced master magician, only 1 step away from grandmaster rank. Hence, he had been able to decode the magic arrays within the time limit, obtaining the treasure. Unfortunately, of the many powers that had attempted to use the same method, very few had succeeded. Demon God's temptations appeared at random, and even if players found one, challenging it would be pointless if they couldn't decode the magic arrays before the temple vanished. Even if they succeeded, they'd still have to escape the Demon God's phantom. If they couldn't last 20 or 30 seconds, escaping with the treasure would be impossible. Now that Xiaofan was a master magician, albeit only at basic rank, he had a chance of decoding the temple's magic arrays. The time limit was the only problem. But Xiaofan couldn't care less. Since he had stumbled across a demon god's temptation, giving up without trying would be a waste. Meanwhile, confused, Aqua Rose and her companions did as they were told, setting up a starlight gathering magic array around the temple. As they did, the magic arrays concentrated the ambient mana, which skyrocketed around the temple. Now that the mana density is higher, I should be able to decode the arrays faster. Next, I'll have to race against time. Sensing the gathering mana, Xiaofan took a deep breath and approached the stone pillars around the temple. He then began to decode the magic arrays that protected the temple. The several ancient pillars suppressed space around and inside the temple. Essentially, they were the core magic arrays that sealed the temple. If he could decode them, he could enter and leave the temple freely until the magic array's auto-repair completed. He would not have to worry about being trapped or not having access to magic tools within the temple. Commander, Black Flame has gone insane. Those are the system's magic arrays, yet he's trying to decode them. Thunder Beast was stunned as he watched Xiaofan approach one of the stone pillars and get to work. I don't know, Hell Rush said, shaking his head. However, he hired us. Since he wants to try decoding the magic arrays, we can only comply with his wishes. In any case, we can use this opportunity to get some rest. Hell Rush assumed Xiaofan had already submitted to the temptation and become obsessed with the inferior legendary treasure chest, but Xiaofan must realize that defeating a demon god's phantom was impossible, coming up with another method to tackle the demon god's temptation. Although Hell Rush thought the swordsman's idea was even less feasible than confronting the phantom directly, he had no reason to stop the man since this method wasn't dangerous. The Hell Legion began to relax as they kept an eye on the surrounding monsters. Meanwhile, excitement welled within Xiaofan as he examined the temple's magic arrays. It turned out that they weren't as powerful as he had assumed, only somewhat complex, consisting of a series of linked master magic arrays. These weren't nearly as formidable as the magic arrays that had entrapped the Silver Divine Dragon. Given enough time, decoding these arrays wouldn't be a problem. Xiaofan frantically decoded the core magic arrays engraved on the ancient stone pillars as time flew by. 3 hours. 6 hours. 12 hours. The harder Xiaofan tried to decode the magic arrays, the more impressed he became. These arrays offered a lot of insight into magic array structure and manipulations. Unfortunately, the more magic arrays Xiaofan decoded, the slower his progress became. Not only were the engraved arrays more complex than the last, but they also required more mana and more precise mana control. In the end, Xiaofan had only decoded half of the magic arrays after more than a day had passed. He began to feel a little dejected. It's no wonder why only a few powers had ever successfully obtained the treasures, even after learning how to secure them without facing the phantom. The last magic arrays aren't testing players' knowledge of magic arrays, but their mana control. Xiaofan gave the next magic array a bitter smile. It seems that I won't be able to claim the treasure chest after all. Guild leader, your mana control is too rough. Like combat techniques, mana operates within certain rules. It's easier to control if you work within those rules, Aqua Rose interrupted, watching Xiaofan work while staying out of his way. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU combat technique? Xiaofan's eyes glowed as he suddenly realized something. That's right. He then gritted his teeth and retrieved the memory crystal that contained the Heavenly Blue Saint's mana technique. He had wanted to save it until he had unlocked his mana body's full potential. Wielding the technique would involve his mana body, after all, but a mana technique was, at its core, a way to use mana. Even if he couldn't execute Eliade's mana technique just yet, learning it should grant him a boost to his mana control. I can only try it. Xiaofan then squeezed the memory crystal until it shattered, and a stream of purple-gold light flowed into his head, forming a virtual space within his mind. Chapter 2490, Mana Technique Legacy. So, this is a mana technique legacy? Xiaofan was shocked when a virtual space manifested within his mindscape. Within the virtual space, his body performed the 3 sword strikes Eliade had used against him in the legacy trial. It almost felt as if someone were controlling him, yet he could feel the flow of movement and mana inside him. He could also sense how his body and mana were controlled. This simulation was far more effective than watching someone else perform the technique. It's no wonder why so few people learned mana techniques in the past. This isn't something you can learn by watching someone else. Not only did one have to master the 4 major elements to use a mana technique, but they'd also have to master the 3 supreme elements. Even master magicians struggled to create magic arrays that manipulated all of the 4 major elements. One would have to familiarize themselves with each of the 4 mana types' movement patterns and create an array based on these patterns. The Heavenly Blue Saint's mana technique, however, was even more complex, requiring one to understand all 7 elements. Moreover, one would also need to guide all 7 through their mana body to execute the technique. Executing the mana technique, Holy Annihilation, was many times more difficult than performing the bronze combat technique, Lightning Flash. Executing Lightning Flash relied on physical movement, an action that players could become intimately familiar with. Physical control was natural, both in the real world and in the virtual world, but controlling mana and one's mana body was a different story. Both were foreign sensations. Becoming comfortable with one and gaining rudimentary control was already an incredible challenge. Trying to understand them completely and gaining precise control was even more difficult. Fortunately, this memory crystal has recorded some basic information on how to manipulate the 7 elements. Even if I knew how to execute Holy Annihilation, it'd be useless without these details. After watching himself complete Light Shadow and his breakdown analysis of the mana conduction, he breathed a sigh of relief. He didn't allow himself to relax, however. Rather, he started to focus on learning mana's basic patterns. The memory crystal simulation wouldn't last long, usually only 3 to 4 hours, while some didn't even last that long. One would be dreaming if they thought they could study within the simulation for a full day. Players could only try to learn as much as possible during the limited duration. The memory crystal didn't care how successful a player was. Time passed quickly while Xiaofan immersed himself in his own mindscape. 1 hour. 2 hours. From an outsider's point of view, Xiaofan had sat by one of the ancient pillars to rest. He wasn't doing anything interesting. How much more time is Black Flame planning to waste, Commander? We've been in the Star Tomb for 4 days now. Are we really going to let him continue to waste our time, as well? Thunder Beast asked Hell Rush, glancing at Xiaofan's motionless form by the pillar. At least they had been able to grind monsters when they had first arrived. Although they hadn't obtained any loot, the monsters had awarded an abundance of EXP. They had gained a bit more mana control during their fights on the 2nd floor. Fortunately, helping Xiaofan hadn't been a complete waste. But now? They had spent over a day in this area already, just resting. Aside from killing the occasional group of earthen giants that had wandered too close to the demon god's temptation, they hadn't done a thing. All of the various superpowers experts were frantically grinding and leveling right now, yet the Hell Legion was stuck here, doing nothing. Let's wait a little longer. We agreed to accompany Black Flame into the Star Tomb for 5 or 6 days, whether or not he finds what he's looking for. The 5th day isn't over quite yet. After the agreed-upon time, if he wants to remain, we'll retreat, Hell Rush said. He wasn't pleased about the situation, either. If the Hell Legion were one of Netherworld's ordinary expert legions, this wouldn't have been a major issue, but that wasn't the case. The Hell Legion was Netherworld Empire's strongest trump card legion. Every member was an expert among experts. They did not have a ton of time to waste with Xiaofan. Black Flame is stubborn. Not even the various superpowers have found success in a demon god's temptation. What can he possibly accomplish by himself? Thunder Beast grumbled, glaring at Xiaofan. When the two had finished speaking, Xiaofang's eyes fluttered open, and he returned his attention to decoding the magic arrays engraved on the stone pillar before him. This time, the magic arrays were much easier to decode, and the surrounding mana began to gather around Xiaofan. What did he do? Thunder Beast was shocked to feel more and more mana gather around Xiaofan. The mana became so dense that it actually became visible. The layer of mist that had formed around Xiaofan was incredibly thin, and one could miss it if they weren't paying attention, but there were so few locations in God's domain that had dense enough mana for it to condense in such a way. Naturally, the various superpowers coveted every one of these locations. His mana control has improved. Hell Rush couldn't believe his eyes. And it's improved quite a bit. You can actually attract so much mana with better mana control? Thunder Beast gave his commander a skeptical look. With enough control, it is possible. I've met a Tier 4 magical class NPC that gathered a ridiculous amount of mana just by manipulating the mana around him. He hadn't even used any skills or spells, the female elementalist beside Hell Rush contributed. Black Flame is just a swordsman, how can he have so much control over mana? Thunder Beast glanced at Xiaofan again, astonished. Matching a Tier 4 magical class NPC's mana control should be impossible for players at this stage of the game, yet not only had Xiaofan accomplished the feat as a Tier 3 player, but he had done so as a non-magical melee class, as well. Is this why he's so confident that he can help others unlock their mana body's potential? Hell Rush wondered, recalling Xiaofang's previous declaration. Although Hell Rush had seen that Aqua Rose and her companions had unlocked their mana body's full potential, he had assumed it was a result of some means Zero Wing had to accelerate the process. He had had his doubts about whether this method could help the Hell Legion's several hundred members do the same within 1 month. Every player had a different mana body, and unlocking their potential would differ as well. Seeing Xiaofan with mana control to rival that of a Tier 4 magical class NPC, however, the swordsman's claim seemed more plausible. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EUA players' mana control played a huge part in unlocking their mana body, which was why magical class players found the task much easier than physical class players. And yet, even Zero Wing's members, especially Aqua Rose and the other magical class players, stared at Xiaofan, dumbfounded. Their mana control had been much greater than Xiaofang's, especially after they had unlocked their mana body's full potential. After resting for 3 short hours, however, Xiaofan had gained far more control, pulling leagues ahead of them. Just what was going on? But before anyone could regain their senses, the glow from the magic arrays on the stone pillar began to fade. As it did, the faint layer of black fog around the temple began to dissipate, and the gloomy atmosphere vanished completely. You're tuning in to the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.